News and Ayanda Korabe elaborate.
I like to see a change, very, very big change, especially if we can get job. Yeah, we can get job and we're struggling so very hard.
It is not so decent, but at least we see where we are going because it is also a chance for us to look for work.
Meanwhile, Social Development spokesperson Khamim Abraham says they remain committed to funding soup kitchens and helping the vulnerable and destitute. They've encouraged the poor to knock on their doors for interventions.
We've also set up soup kitchens and drop-in centers in communities where the department funds certain NPOs to run these soup kitchens, where we strive to at least give meals to those needy people at least 3 times per week. If people are still struggling, despite these efforts, they are more than welcome to visit the nearest social development office.
Lastly, South Korea's child obesity rates have nearly quadrupled in the last 5 years. A health ministry survey of South Korean young people between the ages of 9 and 17 revealed that 14% of them are obese. The BBC's Celia Harton reports.
A reliance on highly processed foods and a severe lack of exercise are blamed for the sudden rise. The survey's authors said that many of the children they interviewed for the study said that they wanted to spend time with their friends after school. Instead, they spent an average of 8 hours a week attending private after-school academies. Health officials said obesity levels would decrease if more was done to guarantee children's right to play.
Recapping the top story this hour, ANC Secretary General Fikile Mbalula has dismissed protest outside their special NEC meeting in Boksburg as misplaced and based on disinformation. Headlines at 3:30 for SAFM News. I am Dino Motaung.
Coming up in your sports this hour, Djokovic confirms successful knee operation and Premier League clubs vote in favour of continuing with VAR while Uganda claimed first ever T20 World Cup win. More details at 3:30.
Channel your inner adventurer on Top Travel this Saturday night at 8:30 on S3 as we're bathing in mud on an Eastern Cape safari. Blackwater tubing Storms River, free-falling over Plet having the time of our lives, cooking with South Africa's trailblazing salt chefs, and searching for the world's only whale crier in Hermanus. That's Top Travel this Saturday night at 8:30, repeat Sunday at 1 p.m. on S3.
Channel the best father you can be on Afternoon Express, Tuesday at 6 p.m. on S3. As psychologist Clint Maggot offers effective coping strategies for men's mental health. Get tips on saving and investing for your child's education. And hear how Dr. Anza Chipetane shapes bright young leaders. That's Afternoon Express this Tuesday at 6 p.m. only on S3. Repeat Sundays at 8:30 a.m.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
It's chilly around the country. It's hot on the political front, but let me wish you a warm welcome to the National Pulse. My name is Ashraf Garda. Wherever you are, whether you're in Khalishiwe, Klebecha, Welkom, Durban, wherever you are around the country, welcome to the show. And as always, answer this question today. What for you drives the National Pulse today? Always like those quick answers. You can tweet it out. You can post it on the Facebook page. You can certainly call in, or you can WhatsApp it to call in. It's 086 000 2032. WhatsApp, text or voice notes 0614 104 107. What drives the National Pulse today? Now, this is very topical in the light of South Africa's, political changes and positioning as a country or repositioning, right? Now, you know the buzzword, local, buy local, or local is lekker, but what does it really mean, right? Now, I know the general term is buying, or the general sense, if you're buying locally, it's best. It's an investment into our local economy. It boosts local industry, and that's fantastic, right? But there's so much more to consider, right? Because it does ensure that there's lots of money floating around in in our own country, right? But we have to be very careful because, when you look at nations, a nation's brand is enhanced not just by the people, but by people that excel on behalf of a nation. Think Siya Kolisi, just by the way, right? Or the Springboks. But also, it's also enhanced by the brands or the products that are coming out of that nation. So just think about this. Think Huawei, think Samsung, think Apple, think KFC, think Real Madrid, think Louis Vuitton, think Pierre Cardin, think Swiss chocolates, and immediately you link the product to the nation, isn't it? Right? So, on the one hand, by keeping it local, you certainly ensure that your balance of payments in terms of money outflows are minimized, which is a good thing. However, when you emphasize buying local and thinking that local only is good enough, that's rather naive. Because if you push that line to the extreme of saying we must only buy local, you then shut off the rest of the global economy. You're also saying that they should also buy local, which means they shouldn't buy from us. So how is it that we want to expand our products, but we don't want to buy theirs? The reality is that we live in a global village, and it's just that. It's very, very global, right? So if we emphasize buying local only, there's a good chance that very few countries then will know much about us and our brands. But the question then is, how do we sell what we produce? So what's my point here? My point is this. Buying local is good. It's important, but it's not exclusive. You can't just say local is lekker and nothing else matters. What we should be emphasizing in the light of what I mentioned about the global brands and their impact on the nation brand is build local. Yeah, don't just buy local, build local, build within the country, build local, sell global. Can you do that? Can you build local, sell global? If you do that, not only you'll be helping our balance of payments, but I can tell you now, you would be ensuring that we have a massive, massive investment in how South Africa's global brand or nation brand is perceived. Just consider that, right? Well, that's my point. Now, what's yours?
X at SFM Radio and at Ashraf Garda.
I did ask you the question. You can comment on my, buy, build local, sell global. Got that? Build local, sell global. You can comment on whether that makes sense to you, or would you disregard or discard that. You can also call in on whatever you think is that drives the National Pulse today. 086 000 2032. We know there's a big ANC NEC meeting taking place today. Should end around 6 o'clock. There's been so much other conversations. We'll chat to Herman Mashaba as well, and many others as we reflect some of the biggest issues in our country. In fact, talking about the ANC now, some ANC members are picketing outside the Birchwood Hotel, where the ANC's National Executive Committee meeting is currently underway. So that should end around 6. Those who picket are opposed to the pending, possible coalition, really, between the ANC and the DA, right? And one of those members is Tutukile Zuma. So appreciate your time and thanks for joining us on the National Pulse.
Good afternoon, and good afternoon to the listeners.
Thank you. Now, understand you are amongst those protesters saying no to the DA. Tell me why.
Yes, we did not. We're not protesting. We are just outside the NEC meeting at Birchwood to register our concern around a possibility of an inclusion of the Democratic Alliance into the Government of National Unity. Over the past 5 days, we've seen quite a concerted campaign, we believe, coming from our white capital in the main, through the media, rating agency, all manner of various stakeholders, who have been punting a coalition between the ANC and the DA. And so we're saying, as members of the African National Congress, we do not think that a government of national unity that includes the DA would be able to take South Africa forward in the manner in which the ANC envisions. You would understand that the DA has been against transformation over the past 30 years. All the progressive legislation, including the recent NHI, they have been against, because they stand firmly against the transformation of South Africa. They also just burnt our flag not so long ago, so they're not even patriotic. And we believe the ANC can form government and lead a government of national unity that does not include the Democratic Alliance.
But isn't that a contradiction? You know, the very nature of a government of national unity. The last two words are telling: national unity. How do you leave a party out of the equation when they've collected 20% more, in fact, of the votes?
Well, I think the real question should be, how does the DA leave the black majority out of its policies and the poor people out of its policies? Over the 30 years, how do they leave people without sufficient access to healthcare out of its policies? How do they leave the majority of South Africans behind? That's the real question. We believe in universal healthcare, which is why we passed the NHI. The DA is directly opposed to that. We believe in transformation, which is why we believe in an affirmative action should continue. Minimum wage should be expanded to an income grant. They are directly opposed to that if you read their manifesto. So the real question is, how do you have a political party in South Africa that stands against the transformation of the majority?
Well,
and
I mean,
because the DA represents by and large white interests, keeping the status quo as it is, we don't believe that they have a place in a progressive government. If the DA is included, for us, that would signify some regression, and we don't want regression, we want progress.
Okay. Now, what I'm saying is we've just come out of an election. The DA has its manifesto, so has the ANC, as you're well aware of, and whatever those visions are, you know, certain members of the public have voted for one party and others have voted for another, and others have voted for party 3, 4, 5, 6, right? Those all reflect the will of the people as it stands, right? Now, the reality is, the party that you support, the party that you're a part of as an ANC member, you've underwhelmed in this election, right? And therefore, you need to make a deal. Now, I hear what you're saying about the DA earlier on. I'm just putting it to you that, in fact, you've lost a bit of leverage.
Yes, well, I mean, you would know that, of course, we got about 6 million votes. And whilst we're still the biggest party in South Africa, we did not get sufficient votes to be able to form government by ourselves. That, of course, puts us on a back foot in that for us to be able to form government, we need to negotiate with other political parties so that we get the sufficient numbers to form a government and continue progressing South Africa. And so we understand that we're in that precarious position, and we're saying to our leaders, whom, by the way, we have full confidence in them, their deliberations, and ultimately their decisions. We're saying as those negotiations take place, there must be a key consideration around how we can continue to progress our country forward, continue on the transformation agenda. And because of that, we are registering an objection to the inclusion of the DA. Okay, now you said you're not protesting, but you now say you're registering an objection. I mean, it is a protest, isn't it? You basically want to ensure that the National Executive Committee that either votes on it or passes a resolution or a position with regard to dealing with the DA and other members does not get involved with the DA. You want to make it very clear. Yes, it's not a protest because no decision has been made, right? So today, the NEC, which is our highest decision-making body, is discussing and deliberating on a way forward that will guide them as they continue to engage with the various stakeholders. Okay. So no decision has been made. It would be a protest if there was a decision made and we were protesting against that decision. Not at all. We are in a process. Our leaders, who we have full confidence in, are in a process of trying to engage with other stakeholders, but they are doing so. They are deliberating around what are the considerations to be made, who must be engaged with what is the best possible outcome, right? So we're simply saying, as you continue with those deliberations, note that we feel strongly that the DA should not form part. Okay, I mean, so I hear you. It will be a protest if we were doing it once a decision has been made, but no decision has been made. Well, it's certainly a preemptive protest, if I can put it that way. I mean, in terms of making your feelings heard, right? Here's the thing, right? You don't really know what the NEC is going to say. I've heard, lots of other ANC members, some suggesting similar lines to you to say stay away from the DA. Others are suggesting that a deal has got to be made in terms of what's best for the country. So, if the deal is not made that includes the DA, then your position is like you're all fine and you move on. If, however, the NEC decides in what they seem fit and right for the country now that they would have to include the DA in a type of national government of national unity, then what then would be your position and others of your like who are opposed to this? Well, we are members of the ANC, right? We are disciplined members of the ANC, and we have full confidence in the leadership collective that we elected in 2022. So whatever decision that will be taken by the leadership collective, which I agree with you, we can't preempt, we would then accept that decision and continue to move forward.
You've used the word full confidence maybe 3 times, the phrase, right? I hear that. Hasn't that confidence been diminished by a leadership that's delivered only 40% of the electorate in this election that just ended? The very first time the ANC has ever lost a majority in a democratic country?
Yes, I as a member of the ANC have full confidence in my leadership collective. But of course, the electorate, there is a diminished confidence. Otherwise, you wouldn't have seen the diminished results. And of course, that's a matter the ANC needs to, once the dust is settled and, governments have been formed, the ANC as a political organization must then start the work of introspecting and asking ourselves the question, why is it that our people have lost confidence in us? Not all of them, the majority. We still are the biggest party, but why is it that we have taken such a knock in terms of electoral outcomes? And so we need to introspect and then deal with that when that time comes. Of course, it's very important, but I have full confidence in the leadership collective. But yes, sections of South African society who used to vote for us overwhelmingly, that has gone down, and that's a matter that we need to introspect on once the dust has settled. All
right, here's the last thing. You've got a minute, right? So let's say, well, you've ruled out the DA in terms of any government of national unity, which would obviously imply certainly the same would apply to a coalition, right? So is the DA the only party that you and the others have objected to have objected about? And if so, what then is the solution going forward? What would you propose that the NEC does?
Yes, so we are only objecting to the inclusion of the Democratic Alliance, and that's based on the things that I've iterated to you in this very interview about how against transformation they are, etc., etc. We feel that our leadership has the requisite skills and, political maturity to deal with the matters and come to an amicable solution with whichever political party. We're simply objecting only to the inclusion of the DA. The other political parties, we believe our leadership is fully capable of coming up with the best solution under the circumstances.
Okay, so to confirm, the MK party and the EFF, you're fine with them?
We are objecting to the inclusion of the Democratic Alliance.
Okay.
Anything else is not our space. Unfortunately, it's the space of the NEC, and we're quite confident that they'll be able to deal with those matters accordingly.
And that's where we will leave it to Tukile Zuma. We'll certainly see what happens maybe after 6 tonight or sometime tomorrow morning when an official statement is made in terms of the ANC's position. Appreciate your time there. Tukile Zuma is an ANC member. Of course, you may want to comment on the basis of what she has just said. 0614 104 107, WhatsApp, text or voice notes, or to call in 086 000 2032. And you can also post comments on social media on tag SAFM Radio on Facebook as well as on the X platform, or tweet it out to us. Use the hashtag The National Pulse and give us a shout out wherever you are. Just tell us where you are, and if you're enjoying the show, say what you're enjoying about it. I will certainly give you a shout out in return. More to come, not just about the ANC, of course, and the decisions they make, but some important issues around that may impact the globe that you need to be aware of. Let's do that after this.
And we would buy 500 cars, and we would buy 500 more. So sell your car for the best price, and we won't think about it twice. We buy cars, we buy cars. We buy cars, we buy cars.
We Buy Cars, the easiest way to sell your car by far.
The clock is on a downhill towards the world's most prestigious games, with a wide variety of exhilarating action such as aquatics, athletics, gymnastics, boxing, breakdancing, football, and many more. The 6th of June marks 50 days to the Olympics. The world's elite athletes are all eyeing a podium finish. Hashtag the global battle of great athletes. Experience the Olympic Games Paris 2024 from Friday 26 July until Sunday 11 August. Live on SABC TV channels and SABC radio stations. SABC Sport is the official broadcaster of the Olympic Games Paris 2024. For the love of the game.
SAFM Sunrise with Stephen Grootes.
How do you assess the chances of the ANC working with the EFF?
Look, I'll say 2 or 3 things about the EFF. I think it's firstly the most dangerous alliance that the ANC can make. I think that the EFF has really fascist tendencies. It has rigid, racialized identities. In many ways violent. It's completely disruptive. And I think it's perhaps the single most dangerous alliance that the ANC can make. It is also not a reliable partner. I think it's deeply corrupt.
Professor Adam Khabib, thank you. Vice Chancellor at the School of Oriental and African Studies at the University of London.
SAFM Sunrise with Stephen Grootes, 6 to 9 a.m. The National Pulse, weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
Lots of people want to comment on coalitions. Sure. It just doesn't stop, understandably. If there's one thing that drives the National Pulse and has driven it for the entire week, it's been the coalition talks, right? Well, let's get global now with part of our Global Watch feature. Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov is currently in Chad on the last leg of his African tour. We understand that the trip comes as Moscow looks to bolster support from countries on the continent amidst Russian isolation on the world stage. So just how significant is Lavrov's visit on the continent? What's the plan? What's the takeout? Let's find out more about it with Dr. Andrei Kurtunov, who's the Director General of the Russian International Affairs Council. Dr. Kurtunov, appreciate your time. You're live on the National Pulse.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
It's a pleasure, right? Perhaps you can answer that question in terms of what would be the big takeout from a Russian point of view in terms of the Russian foreign minister's tour to, Chad and other parts of Africa.
Well, this time the Russian foreign minister visits 4 countries in the continent, and it is already the 6th trip of Mr. Lavrov to Africa over the last 2 years. If you look at the countries, you'll see that they have very different relations with Moscow. For instance, if we're talking about Guinea, there is a fairly strong economic relations. But Chad is clearly a newcomer. Traditionally, Chad has been under very strong influence from Western countries. But right now, it seems that Moscow sees opportunities in building the relations with this country. Of course, if you take Congo, Congo worked with Russia, especially on the conflict in Libya. And Burkina Faso is a country which has strong security relations with Moscow. So you have quite a diverse group of African nations, and in each case, I think Lavrov has specific goals he intends to meet.
Okay, and let's look at a few things. I mean, one is the issue of economic collaboration, economic expansion in terms of trade. What can you tell us about that?
Well, indeed, Africa is not a major Russia's trading partner compared to countries like China or India, but the share of Africa is gradually growing, and Russia is engaged in military technical cooperation with a number of partners in Africa. It is also one of the major food exporters to African nations. And there are also opportunities in other areas. For example, energy. Russia can provide African countries with some technologies. I think that it is considering investments into African countries. So there are some good prospects. Though I would not overestimate Russia's role in the African development, it is still quite modest.
I mean, a lot of it is not just development in terms of economic participation, but influence. How important is that? More so on the back of the global fallout against Russia with regard to what's happened between Russia and Ukraine.
I think it's really important for the Russian leadership to demonstrate that it is not isolated in the international system, and that at least a large part of the so-called global South does not share the Western views on Russia. and do not subscribe to the Western attempts to weaken Russia and to defeat Moscow. So it is reflected in the patterns of voting in the United Nations, but also in various bilateral and multilateral fora which Russia and African countries attend. For instance, we had the second Russia-Africa summit in St. Petersburg last year. And this year there'll be a ministerial in Sochi. Hopefully, a large number of African foreign ministers will come to see Mr. Lavrov back in Russia.
What about, again, Russia being a part of BRICS, and now there's BRICS Plus, and South Africa is also a signatory to that. In terms of the reshaping of the world, as was evidenced in terms of the plans of the BRICS summit and the last one held in South Africa, and how that may impact on what I'd call the global status quo.
Well, if you look at the BRICS enlargement, it is a reflection of the new role that Africa plays in the global affairs. Now we have 3 African nations as full-fledged members of BRICS. It's not only South Africa, but it is also Egypt and Ethiopia. And there are also a number of potential members. Maybe this year, and this year, by the way, Russia will chair BRICS. It will host the BRICS summit in Kazan in fall. This year might be critical for the BRICS institutional development because Russia will have to play a significant role in consolidating the institution in its new form. And also, the more members you have, the more differences you have in opinions, and you have to reconcile different positions and different priorities.
Just lastly, many of the countries that the Russian foreign minister has visited, and that region in West Africa, symptomatic of coups in recent times, and very much also opposing, say, French influence. Is that a vacuum or a space that Russia clearly sees itself as playing a major role in, and therefore increased influence? You've got 30 seconds to answer that.
Well, Russia might look at the current situation as a window of opportunity because definitely Russia might try to position itself as a security provider to these countries. However, of course, this instability also creates challenges also for the Russian influence in this part of the African continent.
Well, let's leave it at that. Dr. Andrei Kurtanov, who's the Director General of the Russian International Affairs Council. Any thoughts you have on the Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov touring many parts of the African continent, including now Chad, but many others too? If you have any comments, I'd certainly like to hear about it. WhatsApp 0614 104 107. Let's get the news headlines now. It's 3:30 years to now.
Thank you very much, Ashraf. Good afternoon. Let's take a look at the headlines at 3:30. Chairperson of the Independent Electoral Commission, IEC, Mosotho Miepya, has revealed the composition of the members that have been elected to the National Assembly and provincial legislatures. In other news, ANC Secretary General Fikilemba Lula has dismissed protest outside their special NEC meeting in Boksburg as misplaced and based on disinformation. And tourism officials in China's Henan province have been forced to acknowledge that the country's proclaimed highest uninterrupted waterfall was being helped by water pipes built into the rocks. A full update follows at the top of the hour.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the N3 northbound in Bedfordview has a stationary track just before Van Buren Road. In Pretoria, Eskom Pahleli Drive northbound has delays towards Moot Street. Garsfontein Road westbound has a crash before Solomon Mhlangu Drive, and Bremer Street is slow moving at Van der Hof Road. In KZN, the N3 has been reopened between Key Ridge and Hummersdale after earlier blasting works, and that of course has led to quite a bit of slow moving traffic that needs to get through that, so please be patient. The N2 southbound is queuing towards Spaghetti Junction, and on Sunday the Comrades Marathon will be happening, so there's road closures between Durban and Pietermaritzburg from 4 a.m. until 6 p.m. for the Up Run, and full details are of course available at www.comrades.com. In Cape Town, Victoria Road outbound is slow moving through Woodstock, and Albert Road outbound is slow moving towards Salt River Circle, and Bosmansdam Road westbound in Edgemead is slow moving at the N7 highway. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
This is SAFM Sports with Tuming Khapele.
Right, to me, what's the big story?
The big story this hour is in the world of tennis. A very good afternoon to you. Novak Djokovic has confirmed that he has undergone knee surgery after suffering a knee injury, and he injured his knee during the last 16 of the Roland Garros that forced him to pull out of the tournament. He's on crutches and made no mention of whether he would be fit to take part at Wimbledon, which begins on the 1st of July. But talking about the Roland Garros, in action now is two-time defending champion Iga Swiatek, who's currently taking on Coco Gauff for a place in the final, and we'll keep you up to date with the results as they go. Then in football, Premier League clubs have voted 19-1 in favour of keeping VAR next season. Wolves triggered a vote on the use of VAR in the 2024-25 season after formally submitting a resolution to the Premier League in May, and they were the only side who voted against the system. In order for VAR to be scrapped, 14 of the 20 Premier League clubs needed to vote in favour of doing so. Then in cricket, Uganda captain Brian Masaba says that it doesn't get more special than this after his side beat Papua New Guinea to earn their first win at the T20 World Cup. The Cricket Cranes making their debut as a major global event in any of cricket's formats, edged to a tense victory by chasing 78 with 3 wickets and 10 balls remaining to win the game for the tournament's debutants. Meanwhile, there are no plans in place to move any T20 World Cup fixtures out of New York. This is despite growing fears over substandard pitches. India have privately voiced their unhappiness with the unpredictable bounce and two-paced nature of the strips amid worries over the safety of their batters. Batters have had to fend off short-pitched bowling, but it is believed that ICC is not panicking as yet and currently analysing data from previously abandoned games to establish how to react should it need to act. On that note, it is a wrap from my side for now. I'll have more in the next hour for SAFM Sport. I'm Tuming Khapele.
Just a quick one. You looking forward to the Comrades Marathon? Obviously you have to follow it, but do you enjoy it?
I do enjoy it. I feel like one of these good days I'm going to take part in it.
So you haven't started, right?
Of course I haven't started.
You're not on... No, what I'm
Mentally,
saying, are you like running 20Ks or you're on running 1K like me,
I'm on
Where are you in this?
5K.
Okay,
currently.
you're not bad. You'll get there. Only 90 to go.
Yeah.
Thereabouts, yeah.
In the future, I'll be like, listen, I'm taking part in the Comrades. Have you ever thought of taking part?
I have thought about it in my dreams, yes. and that's where it has remained. It's just getting my priorities right. Okay, one day, comrade. It's very topical, comrade. Yeah.
You're listening to the National Pulse on SAFM.
Right, let's get to the calls. In fact, we'll chat to Herman Mashaba, the leader of Action SA, in a few minutes' time about their position regarding the multi-party charter. We'll also chat to the deputy leader of Build One South Africa, that's Nobuntu Hlazo Webster. All of that coming up in the next 15-20 minutes or so. Right, but okay, let's get two callers. Shorty in Mafefe. Hi, Shorty.
Hey, afternoon, Ashraf, and happy belated birthday, Khudman.
Thank you, my friends. Thank you. I was waiting for you, man. I was waiting for you so we can have cake together.
Ashraf, I'm not a member of DA, and I didn't vote for DA, but we must face reality. Those people who are protesting outside Beachwood Hotel, they are the beneficiaries of corruption. They fear the coalition of ANC and DA for the reasons known for themselves, because they know that ANC and DA coalition is going to work and it's going to take South Africa forward and it's going to stop corruption. So they know that there are no more corruption, no more looting of state coffers.
So you think that's the issue? You don't think the other issues that have been raised around, the DA certainly have a position on affirmative action in BEA that the ANC doesn't have, and many other issues that, around jobs, around, the economy and revising the economy and the way the economy works, that the DA does not share the views of the ANC. You don't think that's the case?
No. ANC is the majority shareholder, so that they have power to implement their policies, because DA is the second majority shareholder. And I don't understand why the Dizile Zuma is talking about the government of national unity that excludes DA, when DA is the second shareholder. I don't understand why.
Okay, I think it's a point made, and I've asked the same question as you know, right? That, why would you then call it that when the second party would be discarded up front? Just a thought in terms of what may come through. Thanks for that, Shorty. Hopefully we'll have cake on my next birthday, or maybe on your birthday. You never know, right? Let's get to a call in Valcom. Michaela on the line. Hi.
Yes, Ashraf.
Yes,
I just want to.
Yeah.
I'm okay yourself. I just want to concern on the issue of coalition between ANC and DA.
Yeah.
I think the coalition between DA and ANC, DA is just own interest. It's not necessarily interested in South African public in general. One of the reasons being that DA is willing to make a coalition with the FF Plus, whereas the FF Plus has its own constituency, which is those extreme, and it finds it okay with that. But the DA is not willing or is not agreeing to an ANC having a coalition with the.
Okay, I hear you. I hear you, and I think many would agree. Many would agree with you. But in the same way, would you then be concerned about the ANC that professes to speak for the majority, and they've done that for many, many years, but their actual actions have fallen well short, and you can see the electorate has shunned them.
Has punished them. Yeah, true, you are 100%. The electorate has punished them. But the electorate has punished them by swaying to the Zuma, to MK.
Yeah. Noted, yeah.
Not necessarily to DA. It has gone to DA. It tells you the electorate still want a certain narrative of thinking. Now, if the ANC goes to the DA or further and say, then it's separating itself further away from its electorate.
Okay.
And in the next election, it would even be worse for them. But the issue as well is for them to say, why aren't they empowering? Like we are saying, we know that South Africa is the most unequal country. Are they working on that narrative to say we try and make this inequality to be as close as possible to zero, for example? They are not working towards that. And if they are not working towards that, it gives power to DA. Until, for example, let me ask you one question. How many black billionaires do you know in South Africa? How many in number?
Clearly not enough.
Apart from Ramaphosa and apart from Ramaphosa.
Yeah, but let me ask you. We're going to leave it at that. Let me ask you this, Michaela. If that's the case, a lot of questions need to be asked not about the DA. Then what has the ANC leadership done about just that, considering they have put in practice BEE? Let's leave it at that. Thanks for that, Skoll. Again, as always, we get a cross-section of opinions. Some I agree with, some I don't agree with. We always get us thinking, and it always gets our pulses boiling, and that's maybe as it should be, right? Michael in Durban. Hi, Michael.
Yes, how are you?
Yeah, good indeed. Go ahead, Michael.
Thanks very much. No, let me make this point. For me, honestly, I'm an MK. I voted for MK regionally, provincially, and nationally. But I stay in a ward in Durban that is actually my councillor is DA, and I'm getting 100% along with it. But my problem is that if that DA-ANC coalition is formed the basis of hatred of other political parties like AFF, PA, or MK, that is wrong.
Okay.
There is political intolerance. I should accept that you are a DA, and I should accept that someone is MK without being offense. But DA to form a coalition with the ANC for me, somewhat nationally it will work. But the problem provincially and locally on the metros, there was a very big problem.
So what do you make of the party that you voted for that in fact doesn't want to even return calls from the ANC?
That's a very difficult question. I thought, I'm being very honest.
Yeah.
Because now elections have gone past. Voters have decided if they want to work for the and contribute for the building of this country, obviously you have to be a part of somebody else. That one, they cannot avoid it because we didn't get out as majority, whether provincially, whether nationally. We don't have those ones.
Okay,
but
got
this
that.
This is the time now for us to pull up your head and say, now we want to move forward. Who bring us at the table? What can you do and what somebody else can you do?
Well, in the light of what you said, as they don't answer their calls, the MK party, make that call and let them listen to you. Michael, thanks for that call. Right, there we are. Lots of thoughts on those issues. And again, keep the calls coming. We'll take them. We'll look at your WhatsApps as well in text or voice note form 0614 104 107. We'll chat to Herman Mashaba in a moment.
You're listening to the National Pulse on SAFM. SAFM.
Right, so I'll tell you what, since we voted May 29, there's not been a single dull day in the country. There's not been a single dull day in hosting the National Pulse. The stories are moving at a pace that I'm struggling to cope with, understandably so. Today we now found out that Herman Mashaba, the leader of Action SA, as you know, they've been part of the multi-party charter, led in the main by the DA. Well, I understand that earlier on today, Herman Mashaba has announced that his party is left or leaving the multi-party charter. Let's try and understand exactly the why behind that. Herman, appreciate your time, and you're live on the National Pulse.
Great. Thank you for the opportunity to talk to you, Ashraf. And Ashraf, the reason why Action SA has taken the decision to pull out of the multi-party charter is it's on principle and respect for the rule of law. You remember last year when the multi-party charter agreement was signed in front of the nation, we committed in writing in front of the nation that we will not entertain any negotiations with the ANC.
Mm-hmm.
And secondly, what's important for South Africans to note and your listeners is the fact that one of the clauses in the agreement that obviously after the elections, if we don't achieve the majority, each party can really decide their own way. But the only way we decide is that we can either all agree that we collapse the multi-party, or any party that is no longer interested, then they must resign from the multi-party charter. And on Saturday, DA called a multi-party charter meeting. We thought they will obviously present something to us, and meeting that took over 2 hours, which should have lasted 15-30 minutes at the most. And obviously, it had to be us raising with them that. But DA, we see you and the IFP, you've already started negotiations with the ANC. What's the position? Here's the agreement. You guys are supposed to call for the dissolution of the multi-party charter, or alternatively, you guys must resign. Can you guys do the right thing and resign? And they refuse to do both. And obviously on Monday, as you are aware, last Friday I had a press conference and announced that we're going to have a Senate meeting. And at our Senate meeting, we decided to respect the loss of the country and agreement we signed with others. We said obviously these other parties are already in breach of the agreement, so we can't really in an agreement that we signed.
All right. What did the DA say when you had even asked them to either resign or to work together? What did they say?
They said they will come back to us on Thursday. It was last Saturday. They said they'll come back to us on Thursday because they are still going to be discussing with our FedEx.
Okay, so let me.
But we said, but you guys have already started the negotiations.
So let me understand this for the record. The single fundamental reason why you've pulled out of that multi-party charter, you as Action SA, is what?
It is because, remember, I don't know if you were following what I was saying to you. It is because these other parties were in breach of the agreement.
Okay.
So what I'm saying is, if you're in an agreement with someone and the person is in breach and is not doing anything about it, we felt there's no need for us to remain in an agreement that the signatories don't respect that agreement.
Okay, now I heard you saying they're in breach. I just want to be sure that would be the number one reason. Which then gets me thinking about two other important issues. Point one is, why are you surprised? Because, you left the DA yourself for many other factors, and you left very, very dissatisfied with them. Why then did you feel there was a need to go into an agreement with them before the election?
Well, I think, Ashraf, you live in this country. You know the political environment. I don't think you, as someone in broadcasting, you expected any one party to get outright majority, including us as Action SA. When we signed the agreement, we were saying we signed in this agreement because we can see that there's no way anyone can get outright majority. It's better to start the negotiations because after the elections, we only have got 2 weeks to start the negotiations. So let's discuss and agree on the fundamental issues beforehand so that after the elections, if we do get 50+1, we can just really do the final touches. And now, we, as Action SA, we had already made it clear at the formation of our party that we will not talk to the ANC. So now you can imagine if you don't talk to the ANC, you don't talk to the DA, would have really been completely abnormal because there was just no way that Action SA, a three-year-old party, can get outright majority.
Well, I'm going to ask you that in a moment. If you don't talk to the ANC and you don't talk to the DA, goodness, who is Action SA going to be talking to? We'll give you a minute to think about that answer because we'll talk to you in a moment.
Mama Kitty, I heard Rand Water talking on the radio about how dangerous it is for people to encroach on their pipeline servitude.
Yes, those high-pressure Rand Water pipelines are under the ground distributing megalitres of water. When people build on top of the pipeline, Rand Water is unable to conduct maintenance on the pipeline, which has a negative impact on water provision. Pipelines can burst without warning. People could get seriously injured or worse.
Yes, people can die from a bursting pipe. That is why people need to understand that Rand Water servitude is where a Rand Water pipeline is located. If we build our houses or businesses on a Rand Water servitude, then we are encroaching on that servitude. They say if communities want to know whether they have encroached over servitudes, they should look for the Rand Water beacons.
The beacons indicate the presence of Rand Water pipelines under the ground. They're rectangular, made of concrete, are painted either white or blue, and have the Rand Water logo on them.
Let's take a walk around our area to see if there are any Rand Water beacons so that we can also tell the neighbors.
Rand Water, celebrating 120 years of existence and still finding new ways to provide clean, portable bulk water. TV licenses have developed a new GIS-linked national address database to ensure that we can communicate with all our valued license holders. We now have a visual of all licensed and unlicensed households nationwide in order to effectively communicate with you. We remind you to take note of our payment reminders and avoid paying penalties due to non-compliance or choosing to ignore your legal obligation to pay your license fees. We can communicate with all our license holders through cost-effective electronic methods, enabling us to collect license fees and continue to support the national broadcaster, the SABC, in accordance with Section 27 of the Broadcasting Act No. 4 of 1999 as amended. TV licenses. Pay yours. Make a difference.
Top Sport with Michael Abramson.
CSOS Interim Chief Ombud, Ms. Tembilichle Mbata. Comrades Marathon is around the corner. What's your objective as far as the Comrades Marathon this year is concerned?
Well, we love the Comrades, but it's the oldest race that there is. So for us as the Community Scheme Ombud Service, it's really to promote and raise awareness of the work that we do in community schemes. As you know, these runners, it's a lifestyle thing. We regulate areas such as lifestyle estates as well, your block of flats, your share blocks, everywhere where you find these runners participating.
You've got a continued partnership with Rise Against Hunger. Tell us about your partnership.
This is the second year for us. So it's really to bring back that awareness around issues of hunger and bring back that awareness for people to really participate and sponsor them.
Top Sport on SAFM.
Right, you'll do well to remember this, right? Losing a loved one is never easy. Having to deal with all the paperwork afterwards is not appealing, especially when you or your family members are grieving. Knowing what to do when the time comes and having access to certain documents can make the process a little bit easier. Old Mutual Life Assurance Company, SA Limited, is a licensed FSP and life insurer.
You're listening to the National Pulse on SAFM.
Right, we continue chatting to Herman Mashaba of Action SA in the light of their decision to withdraw from the multi-party charter, right? So, Herman, I asked you before the break to consider the two options. If not the DA and if not the ANC, if you don't want to talk to both of them, then who are you going to be talking to?
Well, at the moment, the elections are gone and dusted. So obviously one has to talk about coalition. We've got to talk about 2026 local government elections. And we're still really very, very far away from that. So we'll take the decision closer to the time.
All right, fair enough. But
right now, Action SA is going into Parliament as an constructive opposition to ensure that we can hold the executive accountable.
And would you be going to Parliament? I mean, would it be Honourable Mashaba?
No, we made that announcement 2 days ago, and did communicate this even today in the press conference. Based on the number of seats, we've taken a decision as Senate to send 6 of our real experience team to go and represent us, so that it can free me to really be able to really focus on the outcome that we've received to better this. And also at the same time, Ashraf, what is worrying about these elections, and it's something that we respect and understand. People voted along identity politics. Very dangerous for any nation. I mean, I'm sure you're aware, all the nations everywhere in the world where you have conflict, it's because of identity politics. And that's something that I've given my life, and the Senate has given me the mandate to do everything in my power to ensure that the dream of Nelson Mandela and Desmond Tutu of the Rainbow Nation is rekindled.
I hear what you're saying. I hear what you're saying. I think John Steenhuisen of the DA, in fact, made a point at the weekend that they expected 10% to come from Action SA, so they were rather disappointed. And I'm paraphrasing now that Action SA has fallen short. Does that suggest that, in fact, your message, outside of the message of identity politics that you alluded to, that your message didn't land?
Well, it's not bad. Tell me, John Steenhuisen, I'm sure every week you are reading their polls claiming to be tracking 10% below the ANC. Did they achieve that? Show me any party in this election that achieved what they wanted to achieve, with the exception of MK and a little bit of PPA. Show me. So it's not only Action SA. Action SA, Ashraf, last week this time, we did not have a single representation in National Assembly. Today we've got 6 representations, 6 members of parliament. So for anyone to say that, yes, we wanted to achieve more like anybody else, I mean, but one thing for sure for us, we moved from naught to 6 members of parliament.
Right.
Last week this time, we had not a single member of parliament. We've got 6. So if anyone says we have failed. Yes, we did not achieve what we wanted, like anybody else. I'm sure when you're in business or in politics, you always aim for the effort.
All right, I hear you, Herman. I mean, the point is, it's not just anyone. It was your former multi-party charter partner who said that, right? But anyway, let's move on.
And then I'm telling you, I'm sure you read the paper every Sunday. What did they say that the posting about the tracking between 8 and 10% behind?
Yeah, I mean, I heard that. I heard that, right? Okay, can we move on? What's your thoughts then on what needs to happen next? And does Action SA see itself in any way part of any negotiation to form a new government?
No. I think as Action SA, we are preparing ourselves. We've taken a decision. We've communicated. We're going to be an effective opposition, because obviously with now ANC and DA relationship, that means there's not going to be any opposition that is going to hold the executive accountable, because the only way this relationship is going to work is that people must be a buddy kind of relationship covering one another, and we don't want, Action SA does not want to be part of this.
Let's leave it at that.
We're not in politics to make friends, we're in politics to hold politicians accountable.
Okay, so for now, a party in opposition, no matter who governs the country. But that the Action SA DA deal at this point in time is clearly dead. Herman Mashaba, thanks for your time, leader of Action SA. Let's get to some of the callers now. In fact, some of the WhatsApps, and we've had many of them. In fact, here's one about the DA specifically.
Good afternoon, Ashra and the SFM listeners. And Tate Mashaba must just accept that the DA has beaten them below the belt. The DA strategically came up with this moonshot, whatever, or multi-charter, whatever. Their intention was to destroy these smaller parties, and they achieved exactly that. So you must just accept that they were beaten below the belt. Very unfortunate.
Well, Solano, bottom line is they were in a partnership, and nowadays they moved on without them, which, well, you can make of that what you will, right? Maybe there's some hope.
Ashraf, my name is Lesidima. As a nation of here in South Africa, we must be united and act, or to be ruled horizontally from South Africa constitutions as a sovereignty. So no other people will hate another nation or hate another ethnic group based on hate, emotions, attitude, or whatever. So the point is, the DA to make a coalition with the ANC or whoever is allowed. As a black person, I do agree with DA. The DA have got a good government to distribute South Africa so that we can have a progressive government here in South Africa. Thank you.
Okay, got that. DA's got a good government. Let's see how that plays out. And we've had many people saying media is bashing the DA. I mean, I've had tweets from people saying that, in fact, we are bashing the DA or the alternative. We are actually, we are pushing for an ANC-DA alliance. I mean, who's we? I'm certainly not doing. I'm not doing that about anybody. We simply reflect, and that's what we do on the show. It is called the National Pulse. We reflect the mood. We certainly reflect the pulse of the nation. Let's get the news now. It's 4 o'clock with Dineo.
Thank you, Ashraf. Top stories. IEC hands over lists of MPs and MPLs to Chief Justice, and Mbalula dismisses protest outside ANC NEC meeting. Good afternoon. We begin with election news. The IEC is handing over the lists of persons elected to be part of the National Assembly and the 9 provincial legislatures to Chief Justice Raymond Zondo at the Constitutional Court. Zondo will then hand the lists over to the Secretary of Parliament. Chairperson of the IEC, Mosotho Moepya, revealed the composition of the members that have been selected.
The list that the Electoral Commission is presenting to you comprises 174 women and 226 men, from 20 to 79 in age. That breakdown is as follows. 12 candidates are in the age cohort 20 to 29. 67 are 30 to 39. 110 are between 40 and 49. 110 again are 50 to 59. 90 are 60 to 69. And 11 are 70 and above.
In more election news, ANC Secretary General Fikile Mbalula has dismissed protest outside their special NEC meeting in Boksburg as misplaced and based on disinformation. The top brass of the governing party is meeting to consider various options of forming a government of national unity after they failed to secure enough votes to constitute government. But a group of party members is protesting against what they suspect would be a possible ANC-DA coalition. They say the DA has proven to be against the ANC by opposing a raft of bills the party has proposed. Mbalula says their protest is unfortunate.
The protest is protesting on the basis of disinformation because the ANC have never said that is going into coalition with the DA. The question of the strategic framework is going to look into the outcome of the elections, and the outcome of the elections, as we all know, does not favor the ANC. And in this instance, we did outline that we're talking to everyone who, in terms of the leaderboard, it is quite clear in terms of the significant numbers that they've received. And so the protest is unfortunate and is really misplaced because this is a time for sober minds.
In other news, the Buffalo City Metro Municipality in the Eastern Cape says it currently has over 300 reported cases of electricity outages from local houses due to the floods that hit the metro last week. The metro is currently undertaking cleanup operations to salvage some of the damaged facilities, including road infrastructure and bridges. Spokesperson Samke Longwenya says the metro has been inundated with cases of electricity outages since the beginning of the week.
Reports of yesterday, we had 37 roads that were affected, but this morning our traffic is reporting that only 7 roads have been affected, and within those are some of the ones that is becoming a little bit impossible to try and clear. In terms of electricity, we were sitting at over 300 calls. We're trying to have our technicians to go into each and every household that is affected, so we are begging our people to be patient around that. We'll get there.
Moving to the Northern Cape, hunger and unemployment is forcing a group of Kimberley young people to live off expired food from shops around the city. The group of over 40 makes the weekly trip from Khalishiwe Township to town to collect food that has reached its sell-by date to feed their families. The group says being forced to beg and live like this erodes their dignity, but they are pushed by circumstances. Unemployed youth Ishmael Simons and Ayanda Korabe elaborate.
I like to see a change, very, very big change, especially if we can get job. Yeah, we can get job and we're struggling so very hard.
It is not so decent, but at least we see where we are going because it is also a chance for us to look for work.
Meanwhile, Social Development spokesperson Khamim Abraham says they remain committed to funding soup kitchens and helping the vulnerable and destitute. They have encouraged the poor to knock on their doors for interventions.
We've also set up soup kitchens and drop-in centers in communities where the department funds certain NPOs to run these soup kitchens, where we strive to at least give meals to those needy people at least 3 times per week. If people are still struggling, despite these efforts, they are more than welcome to visit the nearest social development office.
Lastly, tourism officials in China's Henan province have been forced to acknowledge that the country's proclaimed highest uninterrupted waterfall was being helped by water pipes built into the rocks. The BBC's Laura Baker reports.
Millions of visitors travel to Yunkai Falls in Hunan province every year to marvel at geological formations dating back more than 1 billion years. But as tourists took snapshots of what they've been told is China's tallest uninterrupted waterfall, one hiker took a closer look at the source. They found water gushing from a network of man-made pipes hidden in the rocks. In a statement, tourism officials admitted that small enhancements were made to the falls during dry season to make visitors feel that their trip had been worthwhile, and added in wet season, tourists can see its magnificence in a natural manner.
Recapping the top story this hour, the IEC is handing over the list of persons elected to be part of the National Assembly and the 9 provincial legislatures to Chief Justice Raymond Zondo at the Constitutional Court. Zondo will then hand the lists over to the Secretary of Parliament. Headlines at 4:30 for SAFM News. I am Dino Motaung.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the M1 southbound in central Johannesburg is slow moving towards Crown Interchange. The R21 southbound in Clayville has roadworks reported, the right lane being closed just before Olifantsfontein Road, causing delays. The N12 eastbound in Alberton has a crash before Elands Interchange. All lanes are open. And the N1 southbound in Midrand has a stationary vehicle before Buccleuch Interchange. In KZN, the N2 southbound is queuing towards Spaghetti Junction. The N3 in Escort has roadworks with traffic restrictions near the ferry exit. The N3 westbound in Pietermaritzburg has a crash reported before Ortman Road, and the N3 in both ways has roadworks with traffic restrictions in that Cliffdale area. In Cape Town, the N7 Jakes Havel Drive southbound is slow moving at Voortrekker Road. Batencross Street outbound is slow moving towards the elevated freeway. Walterfrieden Drive in Mitchells Plain is closed between Cedar Avenue and Spine Road, and Spine Road westbound in Khayelitsha is slow moving at Jafta Kema Simola Road. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
Coming up in your sports this hour, Bafana's preparations affected by delayed flight for the World Cup qualifier, and Bulls lose Moody for quarterfinal. More details at 4:30.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
I tell you what, just picking up on the conversation I had with Herman Mashaba, honestly, he's got to be peeved. He's got to be peeved considering that he had left the DA, made very clear pronouncements why he doesn't want to be part of them any longer, then came together with them as part of this multi-party charter. He certainly said it on this show 2 weeks before the elections that they're not his friends, but they're in some agreement, and effectively that charter's dead. They've been dumped. They've sort of moved on their own, right? The DA together with the IFP, according to Herman Mashaba. So that story is history, but they're going to be in opposition. And then the other one regarding the comments made by Tutukile Zuma, who's an ANC member who's, well, she says she's not protesting, but she's registering a complaint and a position regarding the ANC to say, please do not do anything in a partnership of sorts, coalition, government of national unity with the DA. Fikile Mbalula, the ANC Secretary General, saying that protests are misplaced. Protests from his own party are misplaced. And I made the point, and I'll say this again, I'm not here to decide which parties must be part of a GNU or a coalition. I mean, that's for them to decide. But let's accept one thing. The ANC has lost a lot of its leverage. The ANC of a week ago could say and do a lot more and talk to a lot more people. The ANC of a week later now has got less friends to talk to. They've got less support. They don't have a majority, which puts them in a very, very difficult position. And as I told my production team early on, they're in a position like, think about it. You need a lift from Johannesburg to Pretoria. If you have your own car, you just go. You don't have your own car. The only person going now is your uncle who's going to Pretoria. And do you want a lift or don't you want a lift? And you jump in because you just have no other choice, and you go. That's the type of journey that the ANC is on right now. They're not in a position that they were a week ago. Things do change, right? Okay, let's talk about other issues of positions, by the way. David Jeffries with us. He's a PhD candidate at the King's College London. We're talking to him because in the light of coalition country that we're in, David Jeffries put together something interesting. So I've almost done a party matchup in terms of, in the last year or two, maybe some of the positions the ANC has taken and they've tabled in Parliament. What have the other parties done? Who's voted for them? Who's voted against certain, bills and recommendations? So we thought, let's talk to him. David Jeffrey, appreciate your time. Hi.
Hi, good afternoon, and thanks for having me.
Thank you, right. So you put together some very interesting matchups or mismatches in the past, and I think it's very enlightening for us to know about that. So perhaps take us through some of them.
Sure. So I looked at 12 pieces of key legislation that the ANC passed in the last decade, and then compared how the DA, EFF, and IFP voted on each of them. And the short of it is that the ANC is going to need to work very hard in whichever coalition partner they work with, developing a coherent policy agenda. Compared to these other parties, support for the ANC varies, but in quite unpredictable ways. So one way that is predictable, perhaps, is that on issues relating to anti-racism or anti-discrimination, the ANC, EFF, and IFP are aligned, and the DA is on the other side of that debate. On the other hand, on issues like the economy, the ANC is in an awkward position where, for example, with something like national minimum wage, the DA wants to circumvent the minimum wage in various ways, whereas the EFF wants a higher minimum wage. And so the ANC finds itself caught in an awkward position in the middle.
But I mean, if the purpose, well, maybe two things. Firstly, in the light of the conversations we're having in our country right now, which is either, government of national unity or a majority coalition or a minority coalition, right? I suppose we look at areas of interest, not just in terms of who may come together, but just general allies in terms of policy. Do you therefore see, in the conversations we've been having, parties that you perceive can work together, and companies, parties, let me correct myself, parties that cannot work together?
Sure. So if politics is the art of the possible, we can't rule out any of these coalitions, but the ANC and the IFP seem to have a very close voting record. And then perhaps the EFF is closer to the ANC than the DA, but both are still quite far from what the ANC would like to achieve. I think, though, that policy alignment is just one part of a discussion on coalitions. Research I'd done earlier this year was looking at the frequency with which different parties attend committee meetings, which are an essential part of making laws. And the DA and the ANC attended roughly the same number of committee meetings, whereas the EFF attended far fewer. And so there's a question there of the ANC might be closer in terms of ideals to the EFF, perhaps, but if it's closer to the ANC in terms of how if it's closer to the DA in terms of how it approaches the hard work of making policy, I'm glad I'm not the one who has to decide between them.
The big X factor is, and it can't be part of your table now because you don't know, is where would the MK party vote on many issues?
Yeah, so I think just comparing the manifestos of various parties, I think there is a huge gulf between the ANC and MK. MK's manifesto starts with essentially a complaint about our constitution as being imposed from an alien culture. The constitution is essential to the program of the ANC and the values of the ANC. So I think if ANC were to consider a coalition with MK, they would struggle on very fundamental values of even what it means to be a country.
Anything else you'd like to share with us that you think is particularly important that's come out of your research?
Just that coalitions are going to require some very clever, imaginative, out-of-the-box thinking. And not to sort of get too bogged down on ruling out coalitions very early. I'm in equal parts optimistic and terrified with what the next few days will show, but let's hope for some creative solutions.
And therefore, from the National Pulse to blood pressure, all understandable. Thank you for your time. Much appreciated on this issue. David Jeffrey, PhD candidate at the King's College in London. Perhaps, David, you can tweet it out and then tag SFM Radio. We'll certainly share the links to that conversation we've had. We'll have a podcast up as well of that conversation with the different parties being matched up or not. Right, let's get to some callers as well. I'll take your WhatsApps as well. Lots of people commenting now on Herman Mashaba, in fact, and not some of them not very, very complimentary.
Truth be told, Ndade Mashaba is a puppet. He's been put there, and there are people who are puppeteers who are pulling the strings. Even the decision of him not going to Parliament, it's not his decision. I remember when they had a press conference, he was seated there by the corner, and the real owners of the party were the ones sitting at the center, and they were the ones who were doing all the talking. So Ndade Mashaba, I almost wanted to follow him, but
I almost wanted to follow him, but did you actually almost wanted to follow other parties? When I say you, I mean I'm talking of the whole nation listening right now. On reflection, would you still vote for the same party a week later? Whoever you voted for, I don't want to know. I mean, if you want to tell me, that's fine. But 1 week later, have you if we had an election today, would you have changed your mind? You say, I can't believe I did that. I certainly have seen some people being very public about, like, goodness, man, I made a mistake, right? Here's another one on Herman Mashaba.
Shame and Ashraf, you can hear the disappointment in this guy's voice, Mashab, because he so much wanted to sleep in the same bed as the main boss, John Steenhuisen, and the madam. Well, and so he's really disappointed. You can hear that he is not happy. And for him to say that he's going to stand in one corner now and be the opposition, it shows that he's really disappointed. He wanted that relationship because there are still other parties that he can work with. Why is not persuading that?
Well, I mean, the point is, as you've heard, if Rise picks up, not Rise Mzansi, that's one thing, but let's take in this case your Action SA, if they pick up, 2% of the vote or whatever, which is very different to 10% of the votes, right? Their leverage is far less than what they thought. The same would apply to the ANC, as I've discussed earlier on. They have far less leverage. In fact, the same applies to the DA, and the same applies to the EFF. If you exclude MK, which comes from a zero base, all these parties effectively have less leverage than they had a week ago, or thought they would have, right? Here's another interesting one on the media and the DA.
Hi Ashraf, so Action SA left the multi-party charter, right? But and what I'm sensing is the entire media world is bashing the DA, anti-poor policies, anti-labor policies, minimum wage capping, white money capital. When are you going to ask the DA for a response on this? We want a DA response on this. Did they even engage the ANC on this? Did they even meet with the ANC on a coalition? Do they want to be in a coalition? Yes, they did indicate, but is that the final decision? Is that what the ANC want? So where's the DA's response on this? Can you please get them, because it's just one-sided here.
I don't know if it's one-sided. I think the reason that a lot of attention has been focused not on the DA but on ANC is because they effectively are the ruling party. That you must understand that. So they're the ones, they still double the size of the DA. We must understand that, right? They're the ones that I think no government of national unity or coalition can actually work without the ANC. That's just the reality. In terms of the media bashing them, well, I can't speak on behalf of the rest of the media, but let's take this show. I don't know if we're doing any bashing. We ask questions. That's it. We ask questions of everybody. Now, it's interesting you saying the media is bashing the DA. Jacob Zuma's daughter, who we had earlier, the ANC member, suggesting that the media is bashing the ANC and pushing for a DA coalition, and that's not right either. So clearly maybe doing something right here, but we simply do ask the questions that matter. In terms of what happens with the DA, let's see what comes out of the ANC National Executive Committee meeting today, right? Then we know a position in terms of what they're saying in relation to the DA. Then let the DA talk. But we know already they are talking. They haven't been public, but they certainly are talking. Percy in Limpopo, hi.
How are you?
Percy, hello.
Yes, how are you?
Yes, you're connected to the National Pulse. Go ahead.
No, thanks very much. Let me start by saying a prescription of the correct cue is dependent on a vigorous analysis of the reality. So the question that arises from that is, what is the real situation now? The real situation is that we should be able to have a government of national unity, a coalition, or a minority government.
Mm-hmm.
That's the situation.
Yeah.
Flowing from that, it is important that the parties that are engaging with regards to that outcome should make choices that would be able to take everybody on board. There are individuals, there are organizations that are raising issues with regard to the matter, and therefore it is only implicit that such matters be taken into consideration so that the ANC remains relevant in terms of the issues that they would want to arrive at. And I believe that they will apply the strategy and tactics. They know the methods that they must use in order to pass a particular period. And I think they will be able to arrive at that. Let us give the leadership of the ANC space to deal with the matter. but without limiting other stakeholders and individuals to make input, because they will have to take into consideration all of the issues as raised, package them, and be able to arrive at a particular decision.
Well, I concur, as you may have heard me say earlier on. It's not straightforward to say we'll do this, we will never talk to somebody else. They're in a very different position than they were a week ago. I'm talking about the ANC. So thanks for that call, Percy. I concur with you. Yeah. Let's get to another call. Kibiki I think it's in I'm not too sure where it is. In fact, in Germiston, which is sort of east of Johannesburg, right in Gauteng. Hi, Kibiki. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Ashraf. How are you?
I'm good indeed. Right. Go ahead. Give me your point.
My point is, Ashraf, if we look at the coalition that is being so rubber-stamped between the ANC and DA, we forget one thing. Before the elections, the DA formed a moon pact to take out the ANC out of government.
Yeah.
And then now, there are people who are pushing a narrative that the DA-ANC coalition will be best for South Africa.
But let me ask you this. I mean, when you say it's been rubber-stamped and people pushing a narrative, who's rubber-stamping and who's pushing the narrative?
I will quote one person, and if I'm wrong, you must tell me.
Yeah.
This morning, I was listening to Stephen Groote's show.
Yeah.
A person by the name of Adam Habib.
Yeah.
You was saying the coalition between the ANC will be best for South Africa, and they are pushing the thing that will be best for South Africa in terms of the market. The market has failed South Africa for the last 30 years.
Okay, I hear you. I hear your point. I heard the Adam Habib interview. In fact, it was very scathing of the EFF in particular, right? And people can listen to the podcast. But what I'm asking you is that pushing a narrative, or is that a person who's expressing as an opinion? Cheryl Carolus of the ANC expressed a similar opinion yesterday to say the ANC and DA must work together not because she likes the DA, she's an ANC member, but because those are the two parties with the most votes and they have the biggest responsibility to now plan a future together. It's what's been given to them, destiny. Well, we're Destiny's children. Let's put it that way.
Can I share a scenario with you?
Go ahead quickly. Yeah.
60%, 40% of the people of South Africa who voted the ANC didn't want the DA.
Fair enough.
If they wanted the DA, they would have voted for the DA. And then 71% of the South African who didn't vote for the DA didn't want the DA. So now, I believe that for South Africa to be best, the people who will think best for South Africa, they should not think for the market. They should think for the people of South Africa, because the market, as I've said, has failed the people of South Africa for the last 30 years. I was working in the mines. When I started back in 1991, one shaft, Ashraf, was employing 15,000 people. One shaft. Today, one shaft is employing around 1,000 people.
Yeah.
Where did the 14,000 go? Because of the market. They want a bigger share of profit.
Got that? Whether that's the markets, I mean, I don't really know. I'm not too sure. I'm not too familiar with all the details about why a shaft would only have 1,000 people from 15,000. But it shows you, I mean, we have so many people outside, even just mining, completely unemployed. And that is a huge problem in the country. And if the parties that are in charge are unable to manage our unemployment issues, then naturally people are dissatisfied. Absolutely. Thanks for that call, Kibiki. Let's get in fact, let's talk about a breach around information that you should be concerned about in a moment.
You're listening to the National Pulse on SAFM. SAFM.
So you may have heard about this, the data breach regarding Discovery, right? And it's being tweeted out or X'd out in many media platforms, in particular the Signia CEO, Magda Wiseka, one of the affected customers, and she said something like she would not, in fact, do any business with the Discovery at all, right? So what's the issue with that breach? And again, what can we do, and to what degree do breaches compromise all of us? Advocate Colin Weapons, if I've got that right, and then it's very telling with the word weapon, right? Information regulator Commissioner responsible for Popeye, P-O-P-I-A. Advocate Weapon, appreciate your time. Hi.
Good afternoon, sir, and good afternoon to your listeners.
Thank you. So help us understand what's happened regarding the breach with Discovery.
So basically, we received a notification in terms of Section 22. This notification actually informs the regulator of a security compromise which took place at Discovery and the number of data subjects that are allegedly affected. So that's the short and long of the notification that we've received. And this notification is being considered by the information regulator so that we can prepare a response in response to the notification that we have received.
Okay, so what, and the understanding behind, how did this data breach occur?
So basically, Discovery is conducting an investigation to ensure that we get the exact information around the root causes which caused the security compromise, and the security compromise is currently under consideration and investigation by Discovery, but it is not yet 100% confirmed what the actual root cause is.
Okay. I understand 20 Discovery Insure clients have had the information compromised, right? So the question is, what can we do about it? If you're one of those 20 people, what can you do?
Yes, so 21 people as per the notification. So if these data subjects whose information has been compromised must ensure that they update all their necessary information, especially where their financial information and financial exposures are concerned. Basically, your password should be revised. You should also ensure that you change some of the security responses and answers as part of the vetting process to ensure that they're talking to the right person. So those are some of the measures that data subjects who have been notified should take into account. But very importantly, as and when new information becomes available, they will be able to assess to what extent is the compromise affecting their person.
Well, look, besides, changing passwords, which I think is like the obvious starting point, the question is, do these people have recourse and recourse against Discovery?
Yes. Section 99 confirms that you can bring a lawsuit, and that lawsuit that you can bring should then be supported by the information regulator to ensure that there is some recourse in the sense of a claim against the person or the people or the responsible party who caused you to your personal information being compromised.
And I mean, just the last thing as we get to news, how prevalent is this, these type of occurrences? And then that point that I brought out earlier about claims when information has been compromised, the public who are victims of it, are they able to actually nail, again, the companies responsible to the point where they get satisfaction? Or is it just, a 1 minute, 1 day aggravation and that's it?
So for the 2021-2022 financial year, we had 500 plus reports. For the 2022-2023 financial year, we had 1,700 plus reports. So it is quite a huge concern, especially the spike in security compromises. But definitely there must be, we have not had a case where there is a combined lawsuit against any of the responsible parties, but the regulator would definitely consider joining such a process in terms of Section 99.
So no combined lawsuit, and I mean, the big question is, I wonder why. Let's leave it at that. Advocate Colin Weapons, the Information Regulators Commissioner responsible for Popeye, personal information, of course, POPI. Any thoughts on that breach and whether you've had your information breached and how did you feel about it? You can tell me. WhatsApp voice notes 0614 104 107. Let's get the news headlines now with Daneo.
Thank you very much, Ashraf. Good afternoon. Let's take a look at the headlines at 4:30. Action SA has announced its exit from the multi-party charter. In other news, the IEC is handing over the list of persons elected to be part of the National Assembly and the 9 provincial legislatures to Chief Justice Raymond Zondo at the Constitutional Court. And police in Iran have arrested 30 people at an event with alcohol, saying they are suspected of belonging to a Satanist network. A full update follows at the top of the hour.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the M1 northbound in Woodmead is slow moving towards Buccleuch interchange. In Kempton Park, the R21 northbound has a crash reported just before the R25 Bobsfontein Road exit, and the R23 High Road northbound has queuing reported towards Pretoria Road. In KZN, the Comrades Marathon will be taking place on Sunday, so road closures between Durban and Pietermaritzburg from 4 a.m. until 6 p.m. for the uprun will be taking place. More details are available at www.comrades.com. The N2 southbound is slow moving towards Spaghetti Junction, and the N3 westbound is slow moving towards the M13 Paradise Valley interchange. In the Eastern Cape, on the R61, the road collapse incident reported between Mthatha and Port St. John's, with stop-go controls at 2 locations, and trucks have been prohibited. In Cape Town, the N1 outbound has a stationary vehicle on Plattekloof Hill. Kendall Road in Deep River has construction site works reported near Boundary Road, so expect delays in the area. And the R319 has flooding reported between Bredasdorp and Streesby, so you're asked to expect delays and diversions. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
This is SAFM Sports with Doming Kapele.
So let's talk football. Bafana.
Let's talk all things football. Bafana's preparations for tomorrow night's highly anticipated FIFA World Cup qualifier against Nigeria hit a speedy bump yesterday when their flight to Uyo was delayed. The team was scheduled to leave at 9 a.m. in the morning yesterday, but they were delayed for 4.5 hours. The team actually arrived in Uyo around 1:30 SA time. That's around 12:30 in Nigeria. And according to team media officer Romy Titus, she says that the squad is exhausted from all the delays. However, they remain upbeat and are hoping to squeeze in training so that they can win tomorrow's game against Nigeria. Meanwhile, Cape Town City have announced the departures of 5 players, including former Leicester City midfielder Kanya Lishabela and former Mamelodi Sundowns forward Thabiso Kutumela. City have also been busy on the signing front, with Hashim Domingo, Kamohelo Mokojo and Fortune Makaringe all joining the club. In rugby, the Bulls will be without inform winger Keenan Moody for the United Rugby Championship clash with Benetton at Loftus Versfeld on Saturday. Moody is ruled out with an undisclosed injury for the quarterfinal in Pretoria this week. The 21-year-old was one of the 3 Bulls starts hurt in the win over the Sharks that clinched Jake White's charges in the SA Shield. Moody's spot on the right wing will likely be filled by Sebastian de Klerk, Devon Williams or Sergio Peterson, who have all featured in the URC and Champions Cup in the 2023-24 season. Then SA distance long runner Malik Haya France says that he's disappointed by his failure to qualify for the upcoming 2024 Olympic Games. Despite his efforts, France did not achieve the automatic qualifying time of 2 hours and 8 minutes at the Milano City Marathon in Italy in April. Meanwhile, his coach, Mike Mbambani, has been selected as the head coach of the South African marathon team for the Paris Games, which he describes as so painful.
Now, I'm not there in the Olympics. That's so painful to me. To our coach to be there, we are not there. But it's not in our hands. It's our performance and his eyes that sent him there, because the ASA saw something to our coach that he can help the marathon team.
Then finally, the ICC Men's T20 World Cup winners will receive the highest prize money in the tournament's history. The winners will receive 47.4 million rand, with the runners-up walking away with 24.2 million rand. Teams that do not advance past the second round will receive just over 7.2 million rand each, and those finishing between 9th and 12th place will get 4.6 million rand each. On that note, it is a wrap from my side for now. I'll have more in the next hour.
Bafana, it's a big game, eh?
It
always is a big game.
It is a big game, and Bruce says, Hugo Bruce says that he expects a win. They have to win this one, just to give themselves a chance to at least qualify, so that they don't have to worry. However, with all this travelling, and there's rumour that perhaps Nigeria have a hand in it, but we don't know. It's just a rumour.
Coalition politics is what they call it anyway. All right, we'll have more sports from the Minister of Sport in an hour's time. I mean, our minister, just so that you know that, okay? Yeah.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
Let's stick with the markets now with Makwe Masilela, Chief Investment Officer at Makwe Fund Managers. Makwe, you want to start with what? Local and global markets, right?
Yes, Ashraf, good afternoon to you and to the listeners. Ashraf, a series of weak labor market readings trumped up hopes that the Fed will begin cutting rates by September, and additionally a rate cut by the Bank of Canada yesterday, and that widely expected cut by the European Central Bank today also fueled hopes of looser monetary policy. But Ashraf, there's more upcoming data like tomorrow's job numbers to offer definitive clues when it comes to the labor sector. And as expected, the European Central Bank didn't disappoint. The guys did cut rates by 25 basis points, and that's the first time that the guys are cutting before the US. And we've seen that inflation outlook has improved, and hence markets expected another cut in September coming as well from the European Central Bank. And the knee-jerk reaction to that was a firmer.
Oh, Mark, are you still there? No? Okay, I think we just lost him for a second. Okay, let me just tell you again, it's amazing how, here's one, has the lackeys on SAFM been given a mission to crucify the Democratic Alliance today? It certainly sounds like they've been unleashed to go on full taps. How do you come up with that suggestion? Because listen to the conversations, and when you say the lackeys, I mean, some of the people are amongst the most significant, influential people in the country who have positions for and against all the different organizations. Mark, we got you back, right? Take two, go ahead.
Yeah, and after cutting their interest rates, we saw a knee-jerk reaction being a firmer euro, and global stocks held their gains while waiting for that jobs numbers tomorrow. And investors have been worried that an overly strong economy might prevent the US from lowering rates this year at all. But this appeared to have been alleviated to some extent, and basically, Ashraf, bad economic news have been good for stocks, and coalition uncertainty back home here still weighing negatively on the rand. And we've seen oil prices going up for a second session, with the Saudi energy minister warning that a recent OPEC Plus planned production changes can be reversed. Remember, OPEC agreed to start increasing production as from October. Currently, they're reducing supply by almost 5.8 million barrels per day, and Saudi is a de facto leader when it comes to OPEC. Brent crude is up 0.6% at $79 a barrel, and some copper traders believe that the recent surge to record highs wasn't justified by the real oil supply and demand, but more of investment flows. And today, copper rebounded from a month low because of a weaker dollar, and the yellow metal extending gains as weak economic data fueled those expectations of rate cuts in the US and denting the US dollar. Remember, gold is more responsive to US interest rates, and we see gold is up 0.2% at 2,360, but platinum is down 0.9% at 994. DAX just like CAC up 0.4, FTSE just like the Dow up 0.3%, S&P is flat, the JSE is up 0.4%, with our resources up 1.3%, industrials up 0.7%, but our financials are down 0.3%. The rand has weakened 0.2% against the US dollar, is now trading at 18.97, 24.23 to the pound, and 20.63 to the euro.
Okay, we got it all. Thank you so much. We'll chat again tomorrow. Yeah. There we are. Mark, we'll chat tomorrow. Another market update coming up later on. Let's get to some of the callers. Again, there's there are so many opinions, and I can tell you now, I spoke earlier on that's my point about the need to not just buy local, but to encourage more than that, the building of local, but to sell global, because that really is what we absolutely need. And if you simply say buy local, and if every country in the world adopts the same policy, there will be no trade. So you can't just do that, can you, right? Okay, I'm just saying that because the rest of the conversations are all mainly about coalitions. We are in coalition country. Impo, hi.
Hello, how are you, Ashraf?
Yeah, very good indeed. Right, go ahead. What's your point?
Look, I would like to concur with a lady that called from Northwest, I think, that there is a narrative that is being pushed of emphasizing how good a DA-ANC coalition. I'm saying this because of the airtime that it has been receiving. I mean, from morning, listening to the show, there is this clip of Habib.
Yeah.
That is continuously being played on each and every session that gets in. And I don't know why the emphasis on that clip about.
Okay, I need to just interrupt and interject you on that. Every show, even this show, we have what they call promo sound bites of one or two highlights of the show that gets then pushed into all the other shows. So that's what's happened, yeah.
No, I agree. I'm just saying, as much as that it is, but you get the sense that there is an emphasis on a particular line that must be taken. Okay, it's fine.
Okay, but wait. This is important because for balance, yesterday, the same SAFM Sunrise had a promo that they played the whole day about Matthew Sforza, saying, in fact, and I paraphrase, the ANC should not do a deal with the DA because if they do, they will lose the local election. So, which narrative are we pushing, for example?
No, I get that and I heard that as well. But I'm just saying the feeling that one is heavy, you see, and that is a feeling because it's the pulse. Now,
it's how you feel. Okay, I got that.
It's our feeling. Yes, yeah. We must voice it when we have this feeling. Now, the argument now is we must move to the center. Now, moving to the center, the coalition that we must have is the one that is in the center, the one that protects the market. Now, who owns the market? Is it the majority of the South African people who have voiced their views on the vote? Or now because those who own the market, the moon point, the ones that sought to remove, and I'm not saying ANC are saying that I didn't vote for the ANC, but I'm saying, are we nullifying, because this narrative, from my point of view, seeks to nullify the voice of the people, because the majority of South Africans, as much as they are dissatisfied with the ANC, they didn't put their vote to the right or to the center. They still maintain their vote to the left. And one will argue, I had a discussion with Oliver, to say, is MK on the left? And I'm saying, even though it's not, he says it's not on the left, it's not pro-market, and that's why the market doesn't want the MK.
Okay. Yeah.
But the majority of South Africans says we are voting for the ANC, we are voting for the EFF, we are voting for the MK. That's why the moon peg.
Yeah, but I hear you. But I mean, the question is like, and maybe here's the last thing, and I'll let you go. Important. We don't set the agenda. The agenda is actually set by the issues around us. We didn't choose for the ANC to lose 40%, to get to 40%. If they got 50%, there's no conversation. They would have won the election. There's no coalition discussion. We don't choose for the MK to get 14%. They do so. Other parties lose. We reflect.
It's the people who choose it.
So we reflect the national pulse as you reflect it. You also feel it. We feel it, and we must reflect it. All right.
Yeah, but for Habib to dismiss 1.5 million voters as if they are not there, because
okay, I'm going to have to let you go, Impo, because there's not much time. I've heard you, but I mean that's Adam Habib's opinion. That's one person's opinion. It's not the whole country. The only vote that really matters is the election, which just took place a few days ago. Thanks for that info. Let's get to another caller, and that's Modisa in Mabato. Modisa, hi.
Hi, Ashraf, please educate me. Educate me on this issue. Were all the people arrested when this guy, Thabo Basta, was arrested? Were there no people involved, government officials, political leaders?
I can't comment. I can't comment because I don't know. I mean, imagine if I just did my own fishing and said I think it's so and so. I don't know. Well, let that case take its course. I don't know. I can't.
Yeah, but my belief is that guy said that he must just speak the truth and say so and so in the political circles were part of this scheme of me escaping from prison. Anyway, Ashraf, just in closing, I think for the best solution for our country, we must go back to our national anthem. Nkosi Sikelela, not Makosi. Get rid of Makosi. Let's get back to Nkosi Sikelela, Africa.
Okay, got that. Well, that solved the country's problems in total. Modisa, thanks for that call. Many other callers, I'll try and take them as soon as I can. Now, you may want to listen to this as we continue talking coalition talk and the fallout from what happened at election 2024. We'll speak to the deputy leader of Build One South Africa in a moment.
SAFM has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Under the code, we are committed to giving news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that is not harmful, does not amount to hate speech, or contain violence or explicit sex. If you think we are not living up to that code, then you can inform the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Direct any complaints in writing to the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. PO Box 142365. Craig Hall 2024. Fax to 011-326-3198 or an email to bccsa@nabsa.co.za. For more information, please visit www.bccsa.co.za. The National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
And I see there's a tweet from Hasina Majid saying, Ashraf, your caller is asking a powerful question. Who owns the markets? Perhaps we need to have a whole conversation on that. We did speak to someone from, not so much Business Unity South Africa, Business for South Africa a few days ago. But perhaps it's time for another conversation. Who really owns the markets, and what does it mean when we say so-and-so owns the market? So it's a question, it's a conversation we need to be having, right? Let's talk about Build One South Africa now. The deputy leader is Nobuntu Hlazo Webster. Good chatting to you. You're live on the National Pulse. Hi.
Thank you for having me, Ashraf. Looking forward to chatting with you.
Thank you. Right. So a few days after the election, what does Build One South Africa say about Build One South Africa's performance?
Look, the reality is that we would have expected and hoped for more. But, one of the things that I keep saying is that nobody is entitled to votes. We're not entitled to votes. What we have, though, is an indication from South Africans that they do want to see us in Parliament. We've secured 2 seats in the National Parliament and a seat in the Gauteng Legislature. So we have an indication that they want to see us, and we have an opportunity to work for South Africans and work with South Africans for the next 5 years and see our representation grow and see South Africans better represented by us in the elections to come. So while this isn't what we expected, it certainly is a result we're grateful for. It's a result we take very seriously. We're taking our role in South Africa and in the South African Parliament very seriously going forward. And we intend to do with it what South Africans have mandated us to, which is to represent them, to make sure that we deliver on what we had set out in our manifesto in whichever ways we can, in every single portfolio committee that we will sit in, together with other parties that we'll collaborate with.
Of course, your leader has had lots of experience with a much bigger party. I'm talking about Busi Maimane. This time it's much smaller. What is a party with a couple of seats, nationally and a couple of regional, what do they do in terms of ensuring that they do have the impact that they have promised their electorate?
Sure. I mean, when you look back, at even some of the amendments that we've seen, at some of the bills that we've seen, some of the policies that we've seen introduced, some of those, not just in South Africa, worldwide, have been pioneered and introduced by parties with 1 seat, parties with 2 seats. And so, there is definitely a significant role to play in making sure that you're able to influence the rest of your colleagues in Parliament with regards to policies that will spearhead change and to the transformation in the direction that you'd like to see in Parliament. But most importantly is we see ourselves as a unifying voice. You mentioned our leader, Mmusi Maimane, who's been in Parliament before and is a figure in South Africa that is seen as a unifier. And so we come in wanting to play that role as a unifying voice in Parliament. And also, it's important to recognize the importance of holding government accountable. Oppositions exists to hold government accountable, and we intend to do that. And that doesn't only happen when you have 20 seats or 30 seats. With 1 or 2 seats, that's something you can do and something that you must do.
Interesting. I mean, you talk about Mmusi Maimane as a unifier. Some may argue, they say, if he was a unifier, you would have had far more seats than you have. The fact that you don't suggests that he's unable to unify people under a common cause, in this case, the banner of Build One South Africa.
I mean, we have a lot of work to do in this country to get to a point where what we are voting for, where what we are all united for is South African values, one, that we all can say we unite with and in, and also just an agenda, uniting behind an agenda that takes this country forward. When you look at, some of the patterns that we saw in the voting, I mean, it's clear that we're not yet there. It's clear that, we still, in many ways, vote according to our groupings. In some instances, we vote according to our tribal groupings. In some instances, we vote according to our race. In some instances, we're voting and not necessarily voting together for an agenda that we all agree upon. I think that there's still more work to do that, but I think that we've done work in that, and that there are South Africans who understand that, who have accepted that mandate and that mission and do it in their own spheres and even support us politically. Hence, we do have the seats we do. But I think there is opportunity and platform to be able to do that more. And Mmusi is now in Parliament as leader of Build One SA, where that agenda can be highlighted and can be played in a much bigger way than it was when he was in the DA.
And how would he do that? I mean, meaning that, what we see as the public, we're going to see him making the occasional, speech or comment in Parliament and brought to order or not, right? That's what we see. Give us an insight into a bigger picture of a strategy of how does he use that platform behind the scenes and in front of cameras to play out the policies of Build One South Africa.
I mean, as a start, we are meeting tomorrow with a group of opposition leaders to engage on how we work together and what we do going forward in Parliament. And there we have a significant voice, and it's a significant start and an important start. The second is that we hold and have held what we call a radical centrist position ideologically. And in what we will be doing in Parliament and in the policies we will be driving in Parliament and in everything we'll be doing in Parliament, we will be holding that centrist role. And by its very nature and definition, that does bring, the left and the right together. It takes elements from both sides in order to be able to be progressive in policy making and in legislation. And so that is something that we will be doing in Parliament behind the scenes and in front. That's something that our very who we are by definition positions us in a way that we're able to do that.
We know the issue of forming a government is still very, very unresolved. ANC National Executive Committee talking about their position today. We'll find out as soon as we can about that, right? What's Boza's position? I mean, where do you see yourself fitting into any form of coming together of parties?
One of the things that I've been sharing recently is that when I was outside of politics, one of the frustrations I had with politics and with politicians and political parties was how you would see these kinds of engagements and negotiations take place. and wonder to what extent the people of South Africa are even considered in those conversations. So one of the things that I'm very committed to, and that we're committed to as Build One SA, is to make sure that wherever we are and in whatever engagement we have, we are a voice for South Africans, and we're the voice of South Africans, and we remember what South Africans have said. So while the ANC has 40%, 60% of South Africans did say and did show that they don't want the ANC to govern alone, at least to govern alone, and they don't want the ANC to be in a majority. And so we're looking at two different scenarios where if there is opportunity to be part of some sort of grand coalition and to take part in government, even in the executive, we will do that and we will represent South Africans in that. But most importantly, it's to hold government accountable. And so, what we don't talk enough and we haven't heard enough in these engagements that are taking place now, even in the media, is the importance of the opposition. And that is a role that we take seriously as well, and that we're looking forward to playing and to being a part of once the coalitions are formed.
And does Build One South Africa have a position in terms of where the ANC should go in forming government, keeping in mind that, I think it's a given you can't leave the ANC out of any discussion because they have picked up 40% of the vote, and without them, you're not going to get 50 from anybody, I think.
I mean, we're not the ANC and we're not ANC voters. And so, they will have to make decisions about what that looks like. Where we certainly stand is to say that what we want to see is a government that will, one, be stable, as a form of government that will give us the most stability. And two things: a form of government that gives us the most stability. Secondly, a form of government that can be held accountable. And when you look at the options that exist, the best option for that is likely to be one of a grand coalition, where you still have an opposition that holds government to account. And who that is, it will be up to the ANC. However, even as you hear that the ANC has been reaching out to the MK, one of the issues when you think of the MK is that there are people who don't even believe in this constitution. And so the question becomes, is it possible to work with the party that within the framework of a constitution which they do not believe in? Okay. And so those are the things that the ANC needs to be considering. But most importantly, it's the people of South Africa, it's stability and it's accountability.
And let's see how you go about building one South Africa. Ubuntu Hlazo Webster, Deputy Leader of Build One South Africa. I think they made the point about having a job in every home, and whether they can do that now as a party with a couple of votes. Certainly Musi Maimane representing them. When I say couple of votes, couple of seats, in fact, representing them in Parliament. So lots of comments again on naturally the biggest issue is coalitions. Here's one about the DA.
Ashraf and the listeners, the coalition with the DA is best for our country. The ANC will stop corruption, looting, deployment of cadres and qualified people. There's going to be a creation of job. Service delivery will be excellent. What Mashilo and Kosato are saying, they just want to benefit from the ANC. That is not the best for the country. The best for the country is a coalition with the DA and the rest of other to form a government of national unity.
Got it. I tell you what, somebody said, thanks for that. Somebody said, coalitions also sound like collisions, and it depends how the parties play them out. It can be a coalition of coming together as real partners and chommies, or it could be collision politics if they don't get that right. By the way, so we know that the ANC National Executive Committee having a meeting today, and we understand direction will come from that. It's expected to end at 6 o'clock. But, you never know. It could be later, it could be earlier. Either way, we will certainly get an update on that. We're speaking to our SABC reporter on that sometime in the next hour. Listen out for that. There's also a fascinating conversation we're going to have around a marketing agency that has been ranked like the most effective. Think about that, which one that may be. Let's get to the news now. It's 5 o'clock with Greg.
Thank you and good afternoon to you, Ashraf. In this news update, Action SA leaves the Moonshot Pact and City Power cuts off non-paying businesses. Good day to you. Action SA has announced its exit from the multi-party charter. The party's exit from the 11-party charter follows discussions between the ANC, DA and other political parties associated with the MPC on a possible formation of a coalition government ahead of the 7th administration. Action SA's national chairperson, Michael Beaumont, has described the talks between the MPC parties and the ANC as a serious breach. He says Action SA had completely ruled out a working relationship with the ANC.
I would also like to say that from our point of view, we are strong of the opinion that we made our commitment in the multi-party charter not to other political parties, but to the South African people. That was what that commitment was. Many of you will remember the press conference in which we signed the multi-party charter. It was done publicly in front of the South African people. It was a commitment to the South African people, and we are very clear of the fact that we have never reneged on our commitment. We have remained steadfast in our commitment, but we cannot in good conscience remain part of a multi-party charter that is failing to live up to that commitment.
The ANC Secretary-General Fikile Mbalula says the group calling itself Not With DA, demonstrating outside the venue where the ANC is holding its NEC meeting in Boksburg, east of Johannesburg, is misinformed. The group says it's demonstrating against an ANC-DA coalition. Mbalula says talks are ongoing with different political parties, and they haven't agreed to a coalition with any party at this stage.
The ANC have never said that is going into coalition with the DA. The question of strategic framework is going to look into the outcome of the elections, and the outcome of the elections, as we all know, does not favor the ANC. We have engaged with everybody, and we're still talking to even others, even smaller parties, because we want to bring everybody on board, because South Africans want us to work together for their sake.
The IEC chairperson, Mr. Tumwepe, has revealed the composition of the members that have been elected to the National Assembly and provincial legislatures. He says over 40% of the elected representatives are women, while some of the representatives are young people. The IEC is handing over the lists of persons elected to be part of the National Assembly and the 9 provincial legislatures to the Chief Justice at the Con-Court. He will then hand the lists over to the Secretary of Parliament. This follows Sunday's official announcement of the final results of the elections. Mwepia elaborates.
The list that the Electoral Commission is presenting comprises 174 women and 226 men. This means that 43.5% of the elected representatives are women and 56.5% are men. They range from 20 to 79 in age. 12 candidates are in the age cohort 20 to 29. 67 are 30 to 39. 110 are between 40 and 49. 110 again are 50 to 59. 90 are 60 to 69. And 11 are 70 and above.
Johannesburg Power Utility City Power successfully disconnected power at Meerdale Estate south of Johannesburg. City Power says the estate owes over 7 million rand and made their last payment in 2014. The power utility embarked on a power cut operation in the city today, targeting businesses that have been missing their payment deadlines. According to City Power, the targeted businesses owe more than 35 million rand overall. City Power's in Pokoza.
Affect the revenue in a whole totality. The not technical losses that we experience as City Power, as well as the revenue that we should be collecting, especially when it comes to LPU and businesses. It's a humongous amount of money on City Power when it comes to the revenue collection in totality.
Police in Iran have arrested 30 people in an event with alcohol, saying they're suspected of belonging to a Satanist network. The police chief in the northern province of Mazandaran says signs and symbols associated with Satanism were found at the gathering. Alcohol is banned for the Muslim majority, but non-Muslim minorities are allowed to produce it for their own use. Authorities in the Shia Muslim-dominated country have in the past branded rock music concerts as Satanist gatherings. The top story, and it's that Action SA has announced its exit from the multi-party charter. That's SAFM News. I'm Greg Khus.
Coming up in your sports this hour, Swiatek in the third consecutive Roland Garros final and Premier League clubs vote in favour of continuing with VAR. More details at 5:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the R21 northbound in Kempton Park has a crash reported before the R25 Babsfontein Road exit. Kleurkop Road eastbound has delays at Zierfontein Avenue. The N1 northbound in Pretoria has a crash before Riegel Avenue exit. In Midrand, the N1 southbound is slow moving towards Baklu interchange and the N1 northbound is slow moving towards Samrand Road. In KZN, the N3 westbound is slow moving towards the M13 Paradise Valley interchange and the N3 eastbound in Pietermaritzburg has a crash reported before Ortman Road. All lanes are open. In Cape Town, the N1 outbound has a stationary vehicle before Sable Road. The M5 southbound is slow moving towards Milner Road. The N7 Jakes Harville Drive southbound is slow moving at Voortrekker Road and Hilberson Drive northbound in Parow is slow moving towards the N1 highway. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
Are you ready to empower yourself with an accredited tertiary qualification? Stadio Higher Education's distance learning programs will set you up for success. Whether you're balancing work and family or you're a school leaver who must work to support yourself and your studies, Stadio offers access to high-quality, affordable qualifications in law, teacher education, commerce, admin and management, policing, and more. Mid-year applications are now open. Visit stadio.ac.za and register today. Stadio, a new vision in higher education.
EFC is live this Thursday. Two of the most thrilling fighting talents to have emerged from the Mother City in recent years, Tamelo Manyamala and Terrence Bolello, put everything on the line to face each other for the interim flyweight title, which guarantees a shot against the currently unavailable champion Nekazimulu Zulu later in the year. Also, Ayanda Zwane and Sibarashe Akonya fight for number one contendership. EFC 114 live this Thursday. Watch it on SABC Sport Channel on DTT Channel 4 from 7 p.m. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
What drives the National Pulse? Every day this week it's been coalition linked to the forming of a government in 14 days, 14 days max from the time the results were announced on Sunday. And the clock is certainly ticking. The ANC will get their position on coalitions hopefully by this. I don't think we'll get to the 6 o'clock deadline, unfortunately, but we'll certainly cross our report to them. What we will do is, if it happens later tonight, of course, on SABC, on SAFM, the bulletins will cover it, and the shows that follow this show will certainly cover it, right? So we have to stick with the issue because it's that important, as one of the callers said early on. It's what we're feeling. It's our pulse. It's what we feel. So what we feel is all these issues, right? Just to tell you, the DA, someone asked why we're not talking to the DA. So, we in fact spoke to the DA's Director of Communications, Richard Newton, and he said that the party is waiting to hear what the ANC has decided on before making official statements. You may be aware, they have not spoken for a good few days. They certainly spoke over the weekend, right, when the election was announced. They have not said much since then. So I understand that part, and fine, we will certainly talk to them when they are ready to talk based upon what the ANC has said. We're talking about the ANC now. Let me bring in Precious Lugayeni, who's an independent political analyst. Precious, appreciate your time. Hi.
Hi, and your viewers.
Thank you. I did say earlier on, what does the ANC do? If not the DA, if not the MK, where does the ANC go? I have no idea. I tell you what, we're going to get your thoughts in a second. We spoke earlier on to Tequila Zuma, right, who is an ANC member, of course, and she's one of the people, although she doesn't call it a protest, she certainly objected upfront outside that ANC-NEC meeting, being very clear that the ANC effectively must not do business with the DA. This is what she said.
Yes, we did not. We're not protesting. We are just outside the NEC meeting at Birchwood to register our concern around a possibility of an inclusion of the Democratic Alliance into the Government of National Unity. Over the past 5 days, we've seen quite a concerted campaign We believe coming from white capital in the main, through the media, rating agency, all manner of various stakeholders who have been punting a coalition between the ANC and the DA. And so we're saying, as members of the African National Congress, we do not think that a government of national unity that includes the DA would be able to take South Africa forward in the manner in which the ANC envisions. You would understand that the DA has been against transformation over the past 30 years. All the progressive legislation, including the recent NHI, they have been against because they stand firmly against the transformation of South Africa. They also just burnt our flag not so long ago, so they're not even patriotic. And we believe the ANC can form government and lead a government of national unity that does not include the Democratic Alliance.
Okay, that's the thoughts of Thuthukile Zuma. So, firstly, Precious, are you surprised at the level of opposition to the ANC doing a deal with the DA?
No, I'm not. I'm not surprised. You recall that prior to the elections, there were all sorts of polls that indicated that the ANC will go below 50. And also mainly during the pre-elections, there was also the formation of a multi-party charter, which the main thing in that charter was that there will be no talks with the ANC at all. That is why Action SA is saying is going out of that charter. But I'm not surprised that it is very difficult for them to find a coalition partner. With the DA, the ANC falling below 50 put South African politics in a new terrain, an uncharted terrain completely. Because some parties who would otherwise go to coalition with the ANC do not want to be part of the ANC. And though the DA has not said they don't want the ANC now, but the majority of the people of this country, I mean the ANC, is demonstrating in Birchwood. But let me talk about, in a normal world where there are no issues, like the manifestos look like the same, but there are major differences in certain things. For example, how they look at global politics. The ANC and the DA would have been a better coalition because they both big, and it would give the ANC some relatively bigger numbers. But the ANC, for example, does not accept the fact that in Palestine there's no genocide. And the DA doesn't believe that. And the main criticism of the DA by the black people in particular in this country is their stance on BEE. So they differ on those very big fundamental things. And again, if the ANC goes with the smaller parties, it will still need a bigger party to get to it.
So two things then. I asked you the first question about surprise to opposition to the DA. Are you surprised then that the DA is willing to talk to the ANC? Because we know that, right?
Yeah, I'm not surprised either. You recall that it is usually said there are no permanent enemies in politics. But also, what I think is missing in the discussions by all parties is the give and take attitude. When you go to a negotiation, you can't be positional. You have to sacrifice certain things, and you need to agree on certain things. You can't just be positional and say, I'm not going to talk to the DA because they are against Palestine. While the politics in Palestine and Israel are important, but politics in Hammanskraal, where the sewerage flow into the river, is more important for me. But I'm not surprised truly that the ANC is finding it difficult to get partners.
Okay.
What is most interesting so quickly is that the speaker of the ANC did indicate that they spoke to the MK yesterday, and they did not get a very positive response, because the main thing from the MK is that if we are prepared to work with the ANC, provided they take Ramaphosa out, and the ANC is positional about that, they say, no, I'm not going to do that. So this is a very, very difficult kind of thing. We don't know what's going to happen.
So here's a question then. What options does the ANC have? I mean, they certainly can't run the country on their own. They're not a majority party anymore, right? What serious options do they have? Not so much, well, in terms of the system, whether it's government of national unity, whether it's a coalition, but secondly, in terms of the parties they can deal with? What do you think?
I think that maybe the likely position, it may not be the best, but the likely position would be the government of national unity, where the ANC will rope in. But what makes that option difficult is that you have had the ANC people say that the government of national unity must not include the DA. I don't know how that will happen because the DA is in parliament. But I think the government of national unity will be the best option, where the ANC will rope in the smaller parties, the IFP, the HNSA, and the Patriotic Alliance, all those smaller parties. Put them
So here's the thought then. Can there be a government of national unity without the DA? Can there be a government of national unity without a 14% MK as well?
I don't think it is. I don't know. I must say I don't know. But it is an interesting question because it's something that we all need to look at because the DA has the second largest number after the ANC. The ANC has 40 and the DA has 22, which translates to 87 seats, which is quite a lot. And then MK has 58 seats, which is also a lot. I don't know how the government of national unity will work, excluding certain parties. I don't know. Because during Mandela time, when we had the government of national unity, there were no politics of exclusion at all at the time. So that is why I said, for the ANC to fall below 50, it puts South Africa and all of us in a very, very new and uncharted terrain.
Absolutely, I agree with you. Is there one final comment you wish to make to raise an issue that you think the audience needs to hear?
I think that the only comment that I'll make, which has already been made by other South Africans, is that all political parties need to put South Africa first. They need to look at what is good for South Africa, not what is good for political parties. And they are like, they must put South Africa first. That is all I can say.
And don't we all know that? The question is, do they know that? Thanks for your time. Much appreciated on that important issue, right? Well, there we are. I mean, what do you make of that? I mean, do you get a sense? I mean, I put out a piece yesterday on the issue of, on my That's My Point feature up front, that, parties must show the commitment that they truly are committed to the flag and the Constitution, and that's priority number one. So South Africa before a political party, South Africa can never be second for politicians because that would just be wrong. I mean, that's how I see it. Okay, we're going to talk about the FE Awards and some interesting thoughts that's come through in terms of efficiency and impact of certain advertising agencies. We'll get to that with Gillian Rightford in a moment, and I'll take your calls too, right?
Hi, I'm Khomotso KG Mweketi, and I believe in music's ability to connect, to heal, to remind, and to bring joy. And each week on my Saturday and Sunday show Seasons right here on SAFM, I endeavor to do just that. So join the movement of Seasons every Saturday and Sunday, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. It's addictive. You might invite a friend. Seasons, only on SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide with me, KG Mweketi. Because where words fail, music speaks.
You're listening to the National Pulse on SAFM.
Right, so you may be aware. Well, I mean, one of the things we said when I got back into hosting a show on SAFM is not just to talk about the current affairs issues, but when we can, to certainly up our interest in issues around technology or tech, artificial intelligence, marketing, brand building, as well as building businesses, right? And so here's an opportunity. We're going to talk to Gillian Rightford now, the Executive Director at the Association for Communication and Advertising. We're going to talk about the FE Awards and some fascinating thing that's come through from these awards. So, Gillian, appreciate your time. You're live on the National Pulse.
Hi, Ashraf. Thank you for having me.
Good talking to you indeed, right. So talk to me about There's been an announcement of the world's most effective marketers, right? What's it about? Then we'll get to the winners in a moment.
Yeah, sure. Ashraf, the FE Awards has, it's the biggest and most prestigious marketing effectiveness award in the world. It champions marketing effectiveness, and it does that by measuring its effectiveness on objectives, and rewarding both marketers and agencies and brands. So it works through a process that is based on 4 pillars. It starts with your objectives and your context, goes through into your insight and your strategic platform, how you actually bring that to life through creative and media, and then ultimately, did you actually get a return on your objectives? Did you set out to do what you wanted to do? And what it does is it hosts these awards in 125 markets. It then collates them and publishes an index where it pulls it all together. And that was released yesterday.
And effectiveness, as you describe it, compared to, other marketing awards. I'm thinking about the Loeries, which, it talks about creativity. I mean, is there a difference between the two?
Well, yeah. I mean, creativity is the second biggest driver for effectiveness behind brand size. So creativity is vital in the whole equation. What the Effectiveness Awards that EFI runs intends to do is to look at the full picture. So starting from the business context, what's happening in your market, what are your competitors doing, what actually led to the need for this particular campaign, and then it takes you through the whole process into the insights behind the consumer need, etc. And then looks at creativity very strongly, and what it does is it's got these 4 pillars, and each of the pillars basically counts for the same amount of votes or points, but the results pillar is weighted slightly higher. So it's a full picture look at it rather than just the one pillar of creativity.
Okay, thanks for explaining that. So you can have a really cute, fancy advert with great talkability, but if it doesn't actually improve the overall brand awareness and maybe the bottom line of a company, it would be beautiful, creative, and ineffective, yeah?
I need to correct you on that because it's quite an important one, and it's a conversation I was having earlier today, is your objectives are not necessarily always market share or number of units sold. Your objectives could be that you want to create campaign talkability, or that you want, like that famous, do you remember that Some Ways to Die campaign in Australia for rail safety? Their effectiveness was for less people to die on the trains, by jumping in front of trains accidentally. So your results can be many things, but they have to tie back to what your objectives were.
Okay, and your point is the objectives can differ from brand to brand. I mean, the last dictator comes to mind about great talkability. Okay, let's move on now to you talk about the awards and what it means, but there are award winners. So who are they?
Well, globally, the top marketers are AB InBev, Unilever, McDonald's, PepsiCo, and Coca-Cola Company. What's interesting about AB InBev is that they have also been the top marketer at Cannes for 2 years in a row. So they're doing a lot right, and so they're doing brilliant creative, and they are being highly effective. So there's lots of evidence that the two go hand in hand. So,
and to confirm, I mean, AB InBev, we were talking about brands like SA Breweries, right? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, got that.
Yeah, absolutely. But that's on a global scale. And then we as South Africa are listed in this index together with Middle East. So we are in a group which is Middle East and Africa. And we were the strongest performing, most effective independent agency in Middle East and Africa was Joe Public. So that's something to be proud of.
Okay, so that's a South African company.
It's a South African independent agency. And there are some very strong independent agencies in Middle East. And so for them to actually come up to the top of the pile there is extremely, extremely good.
And what were they judged on? I mean, what did the judges say about Joe Public?
They didn't call it out specifically, but they just obviously it's points based, and it's based on the number of golds and other awards that they won in our local competitions last year. We also had Ogilvy, who won Grand Effie and did extremely well locally, and would be the biggest agency holding groups. The winner was Omnicom, then WPP, followed by Publicis and RPG and Dentsu. So it's all based on points and based on what awards were won in the local market. If they win awards, golds and Grand Effies in the local market, they can go on to enter best of the best. And we have had some winners out of that as well. So I think what South Africa does is punches quite high in terms of creative standards, and it's good to be acknowledged in effectiveness.
And I take it like the example you've given of Joe Public, when they do something, I mean, they're an ad agency and they do something for brands, and they then win like a top award. I mean, absolutely must circle back into more business for themselves, right? I would expect that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that marketers are, I was looking at some research from the Scopin report, and marketers acknowledge globally, and including South African marketers acknowledge that the Effie Awards are the biggest award to acknowledge if you're looking for fame. And when I'm talking about fame, brand fame equates with effectiveness. So the Effies are, and effectiveness is something, it's a holy grail of what marketers want. You want what you're planning to do to work and to generate the objectives that you set out. So to measure that and to win an effectiveness award is phenomenal.
Okay, and just lastly, what does this say about the state of South African ad agencies when compared to, global?
I think we've always had a very strong industry. I think that with in the last sort of 20, 15 years, what's been building is evidence around effectiveness, and what's been building is the link between creativity and effectiveness. And I'm hoping that we continue tapping into our creative resources and our strategic resources, because they're very, very good. So as we establish more what effectiveness actually means, hopefully our agencies will be able to go on from strength to strength, because they are world class.
And I just noted that I had a message from someone about an hour ago for something completely unrelated to this conversation, by the way. And his name is Pepe Maria. So maybe we'll get him on for some other time. Gillian, totally unrelated, by the way, right? Gillian Rightford, great chatting to you. Thanks for your time. Much appreciated.
Thanks, Ashraf.
Right, there we are. Executive Director at the Association for Communication and Advertising for AFI South Africa. Yeah, let's talk marketing. Let's talk business as well. Let's talk about the politics of the day. And here's one that I think, let me just pick it up here, about Herman Mashaba. That's really interesting.
Ashraf, Herman Mashaba is an honorable man. He's a man of his word. And yeah, you can't say that of many of those people that is trying to slam Mashaba. That's because of how honorable he is. ANC people aren't used to that. So let it be.
Okay, got that. Let it be. Thank you. Well, I'll tell you what. You may like and not like his politics, and I agree with some things, and I don't agree with others, and he knows that. But I think one thing you're right about is that, like when he says, I will not do business with the ANC, he doesn't. When he says, now I'm out of something, he does it. So, yeah, and he's really quick on that and sort of doesn't sit on the fence on that one there. Here's another one. I think that really goes to the issues of the numbers of voters, right?
Ashraf, my biggest gripe is that we are not discussing about over 11 million people who just did not pitch up to vote. While I do understand that there were small hiccups that might have discouraged others, I don't think it would have culminated to 11 people. Why? Are they forsaking the country? Are they giving up on democracy? It's Chris and Kempetown.
I mean, I think you're right, and maybe it's a conversation to discuss, but at this point in time, they've chosen not to have a seat at the table, and the focus is on who's sitting at the table or who wants to sit at the table, and maybe sometime next week that conversation will happen again about the absent voter. Right now, they've chosen, and you know what's the part, and I've said so before, whether you vote or whether you don't vote, the decision of those who are in Parliament will impact on you 100%. No question about it. Here's another one on the show.
Hi, Asha. Good afternoon, my brother. I'm doing well, thanks. But regarding to Mr. Mashaba, how can he afraid to go to the parliament? Because he is supposed to show the public that is powerful in politics. That he want to fix South Africa indeed. But it's a shame action say otherwise.
Okay, there we are. Do you think he's wrong that Herman Mashaba should go to Parliament and lead his party, or his point about building his party, considering they're going to be a party in opposition, would be better served outside of Parliament? Maybe he's right, maybe he's wrong. What do you think, if you could advise him in terms of the strategy and tactics of now being a party that is nationally represented? Do you think about that? Let's get the news headlines now. Here's Greg House.
Thank you again, Ashraf. In the headlines, the Secretary of Parliament says the legislative body will continue to champion for the advancement of women. Action SA's announced its exit from the multi-party charter, and dozens of people are reported to have been killed in the Israeli airstrike on a UN school in central Gaza. There's full details at 6 o'clock.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the M1 southbound in central Johannesburg is queuing towards Crown Interchange. The M1 northbound in Woodmead is slow moving towards Buccleuch Interchange. The R21 northbound in Kempton Park is a crash before the R25 Bapsfontein Road exit. Catherine Street southbound in Sandton is queuing at Weirder Road East. In Pretoria, the N1 northbound is queuing towards the Regal Avenue exit. Eskom Patleli Drive northbound has delays towards Mabopane Highway, and Soutpan Road northbound is slow moving at Winningnestkrans Road. In KZN, Chris Hani Road westbound is queuing at the N2 highway. The N3 westbound is slow moving towards the M13 Paradise Valley interchange. In Nanda Road westbound is queuing at the N2 highway. In Cape Town, the N1 outbound has a stationary vehicle before Sable Road. The N2 outbound in Somerset West is slow moving towards Onverwacht Road. The M5 southbound is slow moving towards Milner Road. Batencross Street outbound has a crash reported just before Elevated Freeway, and Campground Road northbound in Newlands has a crash reported at Palmyra Road. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
This is SAFM Sports with Duming Khapele.
And with SAFM's Minister of Sport, used to be. Go ahead.
All right, let's start things off with tennis this hour. Iga Swiatek gets through to the final of the French Open final after claiming a 6-2, 6-4 win over Coco Gauff. This is Swiatek's third consecutive Roland Garros final, and we can officially call her the Queen of Clay. She now has 20 consecutive wins at Roland Garros, 18 consecutive wins on clay, and it's her fifth Grand Slam final. Still staying with tennis, Novak Djokovic has confirmed that he has undergone knee surgery after suffering an injury on his knee. He injured his knee during the last 16 of the Roland Garros. He is on crutches and made no mention of whether he would be fit to take part at Wimbledon, which begins on the 1st of July. Then in football, Premier League clubs have voted 19-1 in favour of keeping VAR next season. Wolves triggered a vote on the use of VAR in the 2024-25 season after formally submitting a resolution to the Premier League in May, and they were the only side who voted against the system. And in order for VAR to have been scrapped, 14 of the 20 Premier League clubs needed to vote in favour of doing so. Then in cricket, there are no plans in place to move any T20 World Cup fixtures out of New York. This is despite growing fears over substandard pitches. India had privately voiced their unhappiness with the unprecedented bounce and two-paced nature of the strips amid worries over the safety of their batters. Now, batters have had to fend off short-pitched bowling, but it is believed that ICC is not panicking as yet and analyzing data from previously abandoned games to establish how to react should it need to act fast. Then in rugby, the Bulls will be without in-form winger Keenan Moody for the United Rugby Championship clash with Benetton at Loftus Versfeld on Saturday. Moody is ruled out with an undisclosed injury for the quarterfinal in Pretoria this week. The 21-year-old was one of three Bulls start hurt in the win over the Sharks that clinched Jake White's charges and the SA Shield, and he could be replaced by Sebastian de Klerk, Devon Williams or Sergio Peterson, who have all featured in the EuroC and Champions Cup in the 2023-24 season. With that said, it is a wrap from my side.
So I haven't watched a single game at the T20 World Cup.
Mm-hmm.
That's because I'm not going to wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning or 4 o'clock in the morning. No. But now you talk about slow pitches.
Some of them they do have the matches like in the afternoon on our side in terms of South African time, like the other day with the Proteas.
Okay, yeah, all right.
Yeah, but yes, a lot of complaints about the pitch in New York. My understanding is that they built that stadium within 8 months, if I'm not wrong.
Okay.
And it was specifically for this World Cup. However, the batters are just feeling like it's not safe for them.
I think they talked about the dropping pitches that are just too slow. Well, look, the bottom line is, if you're going to get 4 runs and over in T20 cricket, then that's not T20 cricket, by the way. By the way, just to tell you that Stephen Grootes had a fascinating conversation today on 3 different aspects on a moderated conversation on world cricket and what that really means. So maybe check out the podcast. I found that really, really fascinating. Okay, we'll talk to you tomorrow.
Tomorrow it is.
Perfect. Thanks to me.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
And as always, when it comes to the news that matters, the money side that really matters, never mind those that say forget about business, right? The Money Web Market Update. Jimmy, how's it, man?
Good afternoon, Ashraf. How are you?
Yeah, very good indeed. Right, go ahead. What are the big issues today?
A couple of things to dig into today. We're going to be looking at a story that the South African Medical Technology Industry Association didn't want to bring to the fold, but we are going to look at it nonetheless. It seems as though medical technology suppliers that belong to this association are owed about R1 billion by the South African public health sector. So we're going to speak to one of the members of the association and try and unpack what's been happening there, what's going on, and how we can help resolve the problem there, especially in the context of the proposed NHI that we seem to be moving forward with. Then we've got a conversation with Kanti Pai, who is an economist at PwC, around the state of financial stability. So yesterday, Fitch put out a warning to suggest that there would be some difficult times ahead depending on what happens from a policy perspective, and they kind of alluded to the fact that stability was needed. And then today the South African Reserve Bank put out following a statement that said that the financial sector and the financial stability of South Africa is not in question. So want to look into that, want to see where the areas of concern are coming through from an investor point of view and just from an overall sentiment point of view, because Fitch of course does weigh in quite heavily on the ratings of South Africa and South African companies, and even the bonds that South African companies put out into the market. So very important to look at how they are seeing the South African picture, and I suppose this is on the back of the elections. So a lot of the uncertainty and the conversation stems from the fact that we don't know what kind of coalition government we're going to get, and those are the conversations you've been having on a daily basis from that perspective, and we thought we'd look at it from the financial side of it, because again, Fitch has quite an important bearing on how the world perceives the South African investment landscape. And then we've got a conversation with the Cane Growers Association out in related to the fees that they've been paying for being part of, or the what's called the sugar tax. They're saying that this fee that they've been paying has cost around 16,000 jobs in the cane growers market. So we're going to look at that. We're going to dig into that and try and see what's happening there. If you remember, a couple of weeks back, we covered the Tongaat conversation as well, saying Tongaat had appealed that they would, or that they should not be required to pay their contributions because of their business rescue. Of course, the courts have ruled against that, saying that they do still owe their share of the contributions towards that. So lots to dig into from the cane growers side as well. And then because it's Thursday, we've got SME of the week, and today's SME, given that it is coming into full swing of winter, we're looking at a blanket company, one of the few blanket manufacturing companies in South Africa that still has a factory in South Africa. Company's called Kobo Africa, which translates in Sesotho to blanket. So we're going to speak to them. We're going to speak to the co-founder around how they built that business and why they built that business. And I just think it'll be a good SME to keep us all warm and fuzzy while the weather outside is not playing its part. But before we get to that, the markets have had another interesting day, as they always seem to do of late. Not much movement on the currency side of it, but it looks as though we did get some movement once again on the resources side that had been going in the wrong direction for the last couple of days. I'm joined on the line by Henko Krier, who's going to give us a quick summary of what's been moving the markets throughout the day, because he's been keeping a very close eye on that. Good evening, Henko. Thanks so much, as always, for the time. I see resources are up about 1.4% on the day, and I see the rand is still very much in the 18 rand 90 territory. What's been happening?
Yes, hello Jimmy, and good evening to all of our listeners. I can tell you that in the US markets, not much is happening. The S&P 500 and the Nasdaq at this stage unchanged. Can't make up his mind whether he wants to go up or down, but I reckon it's going to go down a bit later in the afternoon as they progress with trading. The Dow Jones, though, is about 0.1% up, and European stocks, they finished in the green, with the FTSE 100, the DAX and the CAC 40 each gaining about 0.4%, almost 0.5% today. But then let's come back home and have a look at what happened on the JSE, where the all-share index finished 0.4% up, and it increased and finished at a higher level of 77,124 points. The industrial index finished 0.8% up. Then the resources index came back nicely, and it finished 1.5% stronger, but the financial index lost 0.7% today. It was a rather good day for companies like Goldfields and Kumba. They each finished 2.5% stronger. There was also Bitcorp, which gained 2%. Sirius and WeBuyCars, they each finished also 2% stronger. And equities finished today 1.8% up. But on the negative side of things, Thungela lost 3.5%. Spar 3% down. Motors and Old Mutual each 2.8% weaker. And Sun International and Maya, unfortunately, again Pick n Pay, losing 2.5% today. If we cast our eyes on the 10 largest companies on the JSE, we'll find Richmond, which had a lovely day, 2.5% up. AB InBev increased by 2.2%. Naspers and Glencore each gained 1.5%, and Anglo and BHP finished the day 1% stronger. But FirstRand lost 1.8%, and that's also one of the many reasons why I'll find that financial index losing quite a bit today. If we have a look at the exchange rate, you'll pay 18 rand 95, sure, almost 19 rand again for a US dollar. Then 20 rand 62 for a euro, 12 rand 61 for an Australian dollar, and 24 rand and 22 cents for a British pound. Then on the commodities market, the price of gold is currently $2,370 an ounce. Silver sitting at $30.88. Platinum on the dot, $1,000, and palladium trading at $933. And the price for Brent crude now sitting at $79.50 a barrel. Last but not least, we'll end off with the price of a Bitcoin, which is now trading at $71,400, and that is also more or less 1,375,000 rand. And Jimmy, that's how the markets performed today.
Thank you very much for that update, Henku. Certainly lots to dig into. I'm also going to be looking at the fact that the ECB was the first central bank to cut rates. What does that all mean? Where are we going from here? And when are we getting our rate cuts? So tune in a little later on. We'll be having those and other conversations. But for now, Ashraf, back to you.
Thanks for that, Jimmy, and looking forward to your show, blanket coverage of the big business issues. Absolutely right. Okay, some comments we've got from you, the listeners, the all-important listeners who are a reflection of the National Pulse. Good afternoon, Ashraf. Herman Mashaba is the first billionaire political party leader and MP in democratic South Africa who worked for his money. Others were empowered. An MP's salary is a stipend for Herman. He doesn't need that spending money. His money is in Joburg, not in Cape Town. Okay, there we are. And there's more. Love the WhatsApp's messages we're getting as well, text. Ashraf, Mashaba is playing smart. He doesn't have to follow the ethics code of Parliament, which was going to be strict for him from pursuing his own personal business interests. So now he can still be in business and still push his mandate in Parliament without any contradictions. Okay, that's another. I wonder what you make of that. There's another one. Let's see. I don't have electricity. I'm in Bloemfontein, Khayelitsha. Please help me. Okay, can't help you, but I certainly got that. So And that we've heard those frustrations so often, right? Ashraf, regardless of who owns the markets in South Africa, it's important to note that for the listeners, that businesses pay tax. Thus, the better they do, the more the country earns. So a business-friendly coalition would mean more money for all provided there's not corruption. So I think you're right. I don't know what does business-friendly mean, because, I think no government can be business-unfriendly and still have businesses and pay taxes, as you said. So I think you're spot on about the driving, the driver of business being a driver of revenues into the government coffers that then is used to upgrade so many things. And if you lose that, you lose a massive tax base. In fact, one of the big issues of South Africa right now is our relatively small middle class compared to many other countries, and we pay the price for that. So I hear you. I think there is scope for a shared business model with a more caring business community. But the other extreme of business are the big enemies. Really, I don't know. I'm in business. I do things in business. I love that. And the fact that the more business people are, less dependence on government, which is not a bad thing. No, let me rephrase. That's a good thing. You don't want to have a government handout if you can provide for yourselves, right? Okay, to the callers we go. David in Uppington. Hi, David.
Hi, Ashraf. How are you?
I'm good indeed, man. How's it in Uppington? I haven't had the pleasure of going there. I need to come.
Ashraf, it's cold.
It's cold.
It's cold now. It's winter, really.
Yeah, I can imagine. Well, look, one day I need to pay Uppington a visit. Okay,
it's a very, very, very quiet town. It's a nice town. Very clean. You'll actually enjoy coming to our town.
I think I must do this with all the callers when they speak from different towns. Tell me one thing. Okay, just the last thing, and we'll talk about you. Give me one unique thing about Uppington, besides it being cold.
It's very, very, it's a safe town.
Okay. Cold and safe, right? Okay, David, let's talk about your other issue, coalitions.
Ashraf, I've been listening to some of the callers for the coalitions and some against the coalition. But I want to take you back, say, a couple of years back, Ashraf.
Yeah.
Just to give perspective to the coalition where it actually gave birth. This coalition idea and narrative that was actually sort of perpetuated on the media space actually was born after the 2016 local government elections. It's where it actually took center stage of people actually because after the 2016 local government elections, people saw the gaps of the ruling party not actually being in control of all the municipalities as well as the metros. So, Ashraf, I want to agree with some of the callers that say this narrative was actually perpetuated by what I call the middle class elite black, as well as the monopoly capital, including the media. Because for me, the reason that I'm saying that is because, Ashraf, if you look at this coalition thing, it was not something that actually an ordinary, which I don't want to use the word ordinary South African, because for me it's an insult. Because the issue of whether a person is literate or illiterate, it's not. It doesn't come into the argument or the issues on the table. So for me, it's more of some of our academia actually sort of utilize the space. They actually saw the space and utilized that space to perpetuate the narrative of a coalition government, of which they never actually, Ashraf, came up with studies that actually sort of support that narrative, especially in our situation.
Okay.
Because
But I mean, David, let's leave it at that. But here's the thing: nobody can plan for a coalition government. A coalition government is the result of, of the majority of people who vote deciding that they not want to give their majority vote to one party. That's when you get a coalition government. If 50% plus one voted again for the ANC, as they've done in 6 previous elections, we wouldn't be having this conversation. We're having it because only 40% believes that the ANC must run the country, and no other party, the electorate does not believe no other party also deserves to run the country on their own. That's the message. So that's the price we pay for a coalition when no party is convincing enough to the electorate. Thank you for that, for the call. And yeah, one day, cold and safe Uppington is where I will get to. We'll get an update on the ANC NEC meeting in a moment.
Channel your inner adventurer on Top Travel this Saturday night at 8:30 on S3 as we're bathing in mud on an Eastern Cape safari. Blackwater tubing Storms River, free-falling over Plet having the time of our lives, cooking with South Africa's trailblazing salt chefs, and searching for the world's only whale crier in Hermanus. That's Top Travel this Saturday night at 8:30, repeat Sunday at 1 p.m. on S3.
EFC is live this Thursday. Two of the most thrilling fighting talents to have emerged from the Mother City in recent years, Tamelo Manyamala and Terence Bolelo, put everything on the line to face each other for the interim flyweight title, which guarantees a shot against the currently unavailable champion Nekazimulu Zulu later in the year. Also, Ayanda Zwane and Sibarashe Akonya fight for #1 contendership. EFC 114 live this Thursday. Watch it on SABC Sport Channel on DTT Channel 4 from 7 p.m. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM.
We're going to certainly try and take a few more calls before we end the show at 6. Now, 2 weeks back we were at Birchwood. SAFM were at Birchwood. We had a conference then. You may be aware, we were there for 3 days, right? So in those same rooms, and those the big room was the OR Tambo room and many others. Well, now we're not there, but ANC, the leadership there, they are there, and we know why, to craft a way forward, right, from avoiding collision, but to hopefully get collision or collusion, certainly to find in some sense a semblance of national unity. Right? Ntebo Makobo is with me, SABC News reporter. Ntebo, good chatting to you. Hi.
Good afternoon, Ashraf.
Good afternoon indeed. Right, I take it, you are there right now, right, at Birchwood?
Yes.
Okay. What can you tell us?
Well, as we speak, the ANC top brass, that is the ANC members, over 80 of them are meeting behind closed doors to sort of finalize who they're likely going to work with into the government of national unity. You would recall that they've opted for the the government of national unity. And since this morning, they were considering report from the National Working Committee, and they looked into that report, and each and every ANC member was then given 5 minutes to reflect on the report. And as you would understand that, there's over 80 of them, almost 90 of them, including the top 7 officials. So after the president has, presented his own political report for the day, each and every member then will have to have 5 minutes of deliberations. So at some point, just after lunchtime, 60 people will still have to have their chunk or their bite. Mm-hmm. So they are busy inside, and it is expected that at around 8 maybe this evening, they would have concluded, and then a final decision will be taken and to be communicated by the party president.
Okay, so just from a time factor, did you say 8 o'clock? Did I hear that correctly?
They were saying around 8 o'clock, but it seems it's not going to happen by then because, remember, it's 60 people that were to speak after 2. It was around 2 then. 60 people were to speak, and then from there, obviously, the Secretary General will have, the national chairperson will have to give a direction, and after that, the president will have to close.
Well, so I can sort of imagine myself laying in bed. It's quite a chilly night, and looking out around 10 o'clock at night and seeing whether I'm going to be entertained by what they have to say. Just to confirm, did you say that the ANC, and I know what the National Working Committee already said yesterday, but did you confirm that the position now is that they will go the route of government of national unity?
Yes, the decision is to go with the government of national unity. Remember, that's one thing that they've agreed upon at the National Working Committee as well as the top officials.
Okay.
And after that position has to then be taken by the National Executive Committee. But there's no way in which they will deviate from that position because they feel that the people of South Africa have rejected almost everyone. They didn't give anyone any decisive majority. So that on its own compelled them then to work together. They say that that government of national unity will look into whether they go with the bigger parties like your DA or EFF or your IFP, or they go with smaller parties. That is a minority government. But it seems most people favor an arrangement that will be workable, like having just 2 or 3 parties, for instance.
Well, you're closer to the pulse of the ANC right now. Do you get a sense then, how national this government of national unity may be, and that means, which parties would they include and which parties would be excluded? Keeping in mind, if there are too few, then it's not really a GNU, is it?
Well, some people are really for the EFF IFP as opposed to the DA, because it seems the DA will cause serious ructions within the ANC. I mean, the alliance partners are not supporting them, and these are people who at some point are saying the ANC has been using them all the time during election time, and the ANC has been sort of unyielding when it comes to what they call the neoliberal policies, and those neoliberal policies mainly favor the DA. So they're saying that if that happens, then it will be a testimony that indeed the ANC seems to be really drifting towards the neoliberal architecture in terms of the political makeup of the country. And again, even some members within the ANC, and of course, even earlier today, there was a protest by some members, Casey Hwale and Hassan. They were protesting, as well as Tutugile Zuma. They were protesting outside, showing really a displeasure against any decision to coalesce with the DA.
Okay, so have you been able to, and I don't mean the protesters, have you been able to speak to any of the NEC members just to get even some hint of where they're going to go?
Most of them are very. They play their cards very close to their chest, and they're saying that they don't want to be seen to be because Figile Mbalula was very outspoken, especially against those who even were protesting outside, and even the alliance partners saying that people are doing this thing out of the decorum of the ANC. And most people were saying that for now, let's wait and see. But most of them, some of them that I've interacted with, they're really not for the DA ANC coalition. They're saying that they can do better.
Okay, they can do better. The question is, who do they do better with? Ntebo Mokobo, you're going to have a long night if you're going to be sticking around there. Right?
I will be here.
Well, there you are. Thanks for your time. Long night for you, but not night with the long knives, is it? That's the SABC News reporter there at Birchwood in the East End, just outside the airports, in fact. So who takes flight, who doesn't take flight, we'll know. We may get some calls. Let's get some WhatsApp voice notes as well. Just one. ANC has lost 70 seats, and that is a big talking point as to who will keep their jobs, from Anonymous in Okay, and in terms of voice notes, here's another which does reflect what many people think, right?
Yes, Ashraf, afternoon. Yes, I definitely was going to change. The only reason that I was going to change my mind is that if the ANC can make a coalition with the DA, then I'm going to leave the ANC. Because we don't want the coalition with the DA. We really don't want that.
Would you have a coalition with the MK if they allow it? Okay. Here's another one about Bausa, Build One South Africa.
Ashraf, just one question for Mr. Maimane there, Build One South Africa. I was truly disappointed with his performance, and I'd just like him to explain what happened. His campaign seemed half-hearted. Was it the lack of funds or what? I was a bit disappointed in his performance. I may not be his supporter or anything, but I just really expected him to do better, and we need his kind of personality to lead as a future leader. But why did he have a half-baked campaign? Thank you.
I don't know if he had a half-baked campaign. I'll tell you what, just leaving aside the issue of MK, which is a completely different, it's an anomaly, right? It's very, very difficult to build a political party. You can see even the EFF over 10 years now, and they're, sitting 10, 11% and now below 10%. It tells you how difficult it is to build a political party. So maybe respect as the others try and get 1 or 2%. Okay, that's the show. That's the National Pulse. And that's the mood of the nation. It's still all about where does the ANC go? Government of National Unity, coalition. Who do we talk to? Who do we not talk to? I think we'll know all about that tonight. So thanks to the team that puts it all together. I'm the front man. I'm the captain, but there's a bunch of coaches behind me. Mark Peller to me, together with Teboho, Keys as always, Busani and Temba Dlamini. And you, the listener, you absolutely contribute so much to me getting a feel of the National Pulse. So a big thank you to you. Let's get the news now. It's 6 o'clock. Here's Greg.
Thank you again, Ashraf. In this news update, focus on women representatives in Parliament, and Action SA leaves the Moonshot Pact. Good evening. The Secretary to Parliament, Gulile George, says the legislative body will continue to champion for the advancement of women. The incoming 7th administration will see a decline in female representatives. Despite this, George says the institution remains committed to gender equality and inclusive governance. He was speaking at the official handover of the representatives elected to the National Assembly and provincial legislatures at the Concord.
Our initial assessment indicates that in the list, female representation experienced a slight decline, dropping from 45% in 2019 to approximately 43.5%, with a total of 174 elected members who are women. Despite this decrease, the National Assembly remains dedicated to advancing gender parity and continues to be a significant player on the global stage for its effort in promoting women representation in politics.
Action SA has announced its exit